of some lag there. Hey everyone, we're starting now. If you're already kind of looking at this, but we're kind of starting the transition process from Nikolai's stream to mine. But go to Nikolai's stream for right now. I guess that's going to be primarily what I'm addressing. I guess so. Go to my stream then. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Real quick before you finish that, are you able to turn on your webcam for what you're streaming through right now? In our yes, because or if you could just turn your there we go, there we go. This will work a lot better now because it was just like a blank screen, and now I can actually okay. Sorry. Yep. Yes, that's right. So, yep, Pratik, my friends Pratik Patel and Josh Long will be joining me to help, give some really interesting, cool content. So, Pratik will be joining us at the top of the hour, and he'll be kind of talking about some things Java on the cloud. So, Java on the cloud, which JVMs you want to consider, and then also using Java for doing functional lambdas and functions and stuff like that. So that should be a really interesting conversation, and Pratik will be around for about an hour. So we'll, see how long he wants to deal with me, and then after that, Josh will also join me, and we're going to be talking about Spring Native, and then also Spring Boot 2.5 was just released this week, so we'll probably be kind of talking about some of the changes there. So it should be a good time. And then after that, going to do some live coding. Actually, one of the things I may try to do is look at the Spring Boot Pet Clinic app and about updating it to use records into Java 16. And we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. That's actually like some work I need to do anyway. So I'm going to be doing some like live work. Why? So I get that. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Nice. Yeah, that should be a really great talk. Hey. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I'll be on. Yep. From for my time from 4 to 7, and then I guess Ted will take over. It looks like some people are jumping over. Good, yeah. Yeah, so far we have about 9 to 10 people on. Oh, here. Let's see. Let me ping Critique to make sure he's actually ready to jump on. We can have a little 3-way conversation going. Yeah, I guess I probably should actually get like maybe this set up through Twitch. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Cool. Nice. And actually, I realize this probably doesn't work super well since you can't really hear him. But Pratik is here with me now. Hey, Pratik. Yeah,
Hey.
unfortunately, he's like on my StreamYard stream, which has like no real connection to this conversation that we're having. So it's, let's actually go ahead and I'll do that. And that will make things even easier. Yeah. All right, I sent you the StreamYard link. Okay. All right, and when Nikolai gets in here, whoops, that's not what I would do. Yeah, when Nikolai gets in, I'll add him in. So, hey, how you doing, man?
Hey, Billy, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Cool. I saw that Nikolai was coming in via Jitsi.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. So, we were just on a meeting there. Close that out, and then okay, here he is. Yeah, he'll hop on with his camera here, hopefully in a minute or two.
Mm-hmm.
I need to share my screen. I can't have a camera. I need to share my screen. So that's that. It's weird.
Okay. Doing like this whole OBS and all.
Yeah, and then I have to be in the center of attention, which actually I thought I could be lurking. But if you share a screen in StreamYard, it makes you.
Yeah.
Shit. Hey, Pratik, hi.
Hey, Nikolai. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Can't complain.
Good to hear. See, as a German, you can always complain. This is one of my superpowers. Should I complain about something? Pick something. The weather, Corona, food. What do you want? Like I can just talk.
That's right. That's right. So
okay, actually, sorry.
No, I was going to say, it looks like you've already started drinking, man. I should go pop a beer or something. But I told Billy that I wouldn't get too hammered, so I haven't started drinking yet.
Is that literally, like, I would not get too hammered? Is that literally what your promise is?
That's right. That's right. Well, it is only 5 o'clock in the afternoon here on the East Coast in Atlanta. So, I'm not on the Billy drinking schedule, as they say.
Yeah, not quite yet. Yeah, I think by the time when I'm getting to my live coding, I'll probably get into a little bit of the drinking as well. So Nikolai, a running joke within our team is someone made like a video about what it's really like to work with Germans, And within that video, all German. I didn't really like Mallorca is like a really popular like tourist destination for in Germany, which is like an island off the coast of Spain, or city on an island off the coast of Spain. And the guy comes back wearing little heart glasses like what Nikolai's wearing. So
I didn't realize that we were wearing sunglasses, so I just got mine, so I'm ready now.
So Mallorca actually, it's indeed the island. There's also a city called Palma de Mallorca, which is then the city there. But yeah, exactly. And it's like the guy's generally funny, but this video just hits it off the park. And he basically is trying to solve a problem with the German dude, but the problem has an easy fix. But the German dudes are like, no, wait, there are systems, and we have to have meetings, and we have to have conversations, and then they're just gone for a 4-day weekend, and they come back with the glasses on like, Mallorca was so amazing. And so since then there's been kind of a running joke, exactly. But I wanted to reply to something that you said earlier. Now I forgot. Oh, never mind. Okay, so I think I'm just gonna leave you to do your thing. I told people on my stream enough times that they need to head over. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna shut up and leave here. I'm going to open your YouTube stream and let that run for a couple more minutes for people to actually, switch over. And then I wish you the best of fun. I'm going to tell you 3 hours. I'm not sure how often you've live streamed, but I'm going to tell you 3 hours, they're going to fly by. You're going to be like, what? It's already over? You're both muted, by the way. Really did that.
Oh, wait, I unmuted. Sorry. I was taking a drink, and usually it's like when you hear like someone like swallow something, it's just like I don't want to have that on. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's all good. It's all good.
All right. Yep. I'm tweeting it out, and
sometimes I don't
hopefully.
People always get freaked out when I whisper into my mic. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm turning to be annoying, as I mentioned earlier. Have a good time.
All right.
See everybody next morning.
Have a good night, or have some get some sleep in.
I will.
Right,
I will. Bye.
All right.
Good
bye.
to see you.
All right. Are you going to have anything you want to share on your screen?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
cool.
I can, but let's see how it goes.
All right. Awesome. So, how you been? It's actually been a couple of weeks since we last talked. So, well, I guess talk face to face.
Exactly. Yeah, it's been going good here. We had a little bit of a heat wave here in Atlanta.
Okay.
For the last week or so. So it's been like midsummer July heat and humidity.
I gotcha.
So been been coping with that. Well, coping is not the right word, but you get what I'm saying. But it's nice and cool today. So
okay, yeah, cool down there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Got So yeah, it's been going good here in the ATL.
Nice.
So what about what's up in Kansas City?
Actually, I think we got hit by the same heat wave. So recently moved and then finally getting a bunch of furniture in, and we're getting some furniture out. We're kind of standing there helping a couple of people load like a sofa, and we're just like sweating just from standing there because it was like 90 despite it being like only mid-May, which is pretty hot for Kansas City. But now, like today, cool back down. It's actually quite like a nice, cool brisk.
I don't believe that for a second. Every year that I've been to KCDC, it has been like I'm trying to find an inferno. How's that?
Yeah. So KCDC.
It's like, oh, that's fine. The hotel is just like, it's literally like a block and a half away. You can see,
and you're just drenched.
Center.
Just drenched.
And you walk outside, you walk the block and a half, and you're just like, I guess I need to shower now. So
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were saying about KCDC.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, KCDC is the Kansas City Developers Conference, and we're actually going to be doing it in person this year in September. So luckily it should hopefully be, in theory, slightly cooler, but somehow it just seems like no matter when KCDC happens, whether it's in May, sometimes it is like right in the middle of the summer, so like June, July, but like it always seems to be unusually hot in Kansas City during that time. I remember, last time you were here, and it was just boiling. Like it was upper 90s, low 100s.
No, it was in the hundreds. It was in the hundreds. I remember.
Yeah. I was just really glad because like I live in downtown Kansas City, which is near where they have KCDC, and the hotel where all the speakers are staying at, the AC broke, and so I'm just like, I'm glad I did
I
not
was-
have to deal with that.
I was not at that hotel. Thank
Yeah.
heavens. I was
Yeah.
not at that one, so I didn't have to switch or anything. But it was. I remember going back from the official after party around 11 p.m. and stepped out of the thing, and I was like, oh my god, it's still hot. And I'm from Atlanta. At least here, it cools down like about 9, 10, 11 o'clock. It'll drop at least into the 80s.
Yeah.
And it won't still be like in the hundreds or 90s. And I'm like, what is going on here? You need more trees there, Billy. Go plant some trees in your city.
I'll work on that. Yeah, we could use a few more of those. We'll make it like Atlanta and just have it be all peach trees.
There you go. So actually, I was just checking to see if I had submitted any presentations for KCDC, and I actually did submit them, but I just wanted to double check since you mentioned it. So anyways, the call for papers is still open. How long is it open for still? Do you know?
I am not sure offhand. Let me actually pull that up just in case anyone here actually wants to participate.
Yeah.
So it ends the call for papers ends actually pretty soon here in June 7th.
That's right.
So definitely get it in. But yeah, there's the link to it, the Sessionize link to submit to KCDC. But yeah, it'd be nice. Like, I'm actually really looking forward to getting to actually speak in person again. I guess I'm here virtually, but
I know.
I'm kind of tired of it. See people in face to face again.
Yeah, it'll be nice. I know that myself and a lot of my friends here in Atlanta are vaccinated, so we've been getting together outside on outdoor patio kind of situation.
Nice.
Which has been nice to be able to actually see other humans in person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give a friend a hug because everyone's vaccinated. So if you're not vaccinated, go get your vaccine so that you can hug your friends, hug your mom. I don't know, whatever you like to do. So.
Yeah. I've actually been getting back to getting to some of that social stuff as well, which is actually pretty nice. It's kind of like the first time back at a bar again. So like, whoa, this is like it's been like over a year, which is unusual, obviously for most. So
that's right, man.
All right.
That's right.
So, do you have some stuff you want to share? So, we were talking, you're going to do some stuff on Java on the cloud.
Yeah. So I just figured that instead of doing a formal presentation, since at least, people are dialing in from all over the world, I assume, I thought that we would chat about some of the topics that, we both have an interest in, which is Java and Java on the cloud specifically. I am actually doing a presentation called Enterprise Cloud Patterns at j4k.io, Java for Kubernetes.io, which is coming up on June 9th, which is like the following week. And the presentation is called Enterprise Cloud Patterns. It's a new one that I just rolled out. I did basically a kind of trial run or first time out for it at the Pittsburgh Java user group a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And nobody fell asleep, so I was happy.
That's always important.
It's an evening. It's an evening. An evening jug meeting, and everyone's at home, and long day, blah blah blah. So, but I'll be doing a rerun of that. It'll be slightly shorter. I had about an hour and 15 minutes at the Pittsburgh Java user group when I gave it. But at J4K, it's like 35 minutes. So I'll be speaking really, really fast. But I'll probably have to change some stuff around to fit it into that slightly more compressed time schedule. But we'll see how it goes. Anyways, so the topic of that presentation is around enterprise cloud patterns specifically targeted at Java developers. And this is something, as you know this better than anybody, Billy. Like, a lot of Java devs are moving to or already have moved to the cloud.
Yeah.
So getting like these kind of best practices. I know there's some people who don't like the term best practices, but I've always felt like it's always useful to at least have something that other people have tried.
Mm-hmm.
And it may not work for you, but at least that in that case it doesn't. It may not work for you. But usually these best practices are something that you can get some good kind of blueprints from for building your own stuff So, anyways, it's a small little rant on best practices.
Ted was suggesting that his cloud pattern is simply to deploy to Heroku, and he's done. So
yeah, actually, Ted has a really good point. I think a bit later I wanted to talk about deploying Java applications to Cloud Functions. For me, that's, when you think of Heroku, that's kind of, it's essentially a kind of a very sophisticated PaaS. So I think of it like a pyramid, and Heroku is towards the top of that pyramid. But in my opinion, at the very, very top of that pyramid is Cloud Functions, right? It's like the ultimate Heroku, or whatever you want to call it. And Ted, I have actually deployed tons of stuff on Heroku in the past, and it was definitely really cool, having that kind of all-in-one platform with all the automation, and kind of a precursor to some of the stuff we do with Cube and various other technologies, except not as involved or complicated or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Nikolai, who still seems to be on here instead of going to sleep, wasn't that the whole point of like Ted and I and others taking over so you can get a chance to sleep? So go to bed. But he does make a good point. Like I'm kind of with you, like with the whole best practices thing. Like it's hard to say. It's like you don't want to over prescribe the best. Like this is what you have to do. But I think kind of Nikolai touches on it. Like the concept of best practices sound as you don't get too involved in the best part. As opposed to like here's some good guidelines to follow, which I think that's the best way to take of it, as opposed to saying like that the best Nikolai. Yes, I am. No, go to bed, mister.
Well, I know Nikolai well enough to say this, that I would not want to be Nikolai's mom. That's all I'm saying. Anyways,
that's important.
Kind of getting back to like the best practices for the cloud. I think there's a lot of stuff, especially in whether it's Java or anything. To be honest with you, even if whether you're building Python or Node.js or whatever, there's an inherent amount of complexity when you go to the cloud compared to a monolith. Well, let me rephrase that. There's a different kind of complexity, right? It's more infrastructure complexity as opposed to like modular complexity. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to have these cloud patterns that you can at least, if you're building something, if you've already built something, or even if you're building something new, I think it's useful to have those and know about them, so at least you have a toolbox to reach into when you do hit certain kinds of bottlenecks or issues or whatever,
Yeah. It is kind of funny that there's like a lot of like people complain a lot, and I'm not saying it's without justification, about like Kubernetes, or a lot about the cloud deployments and how it's like there's like a different and new kind of complexity, and there's again validity to it, but compared to like the earlier time in my career, which despite my looks, I've been, my boys' looks is.
You've been coding for 40 years. Just come out and say
exactly.
it.
But I've been doing this since 2008, and at least where I was, like some of the first places I worked at, like they were very old kind of enterprise shops, and just getting stuff like deploy, getting new server space, getting all that stuff was just an awful experience. And while that could be because of some processes and policy at the places we're at, even if that was like greatly eased, it would still be very difficult to get like some new server space and all that stuff going. So I do think things have vastly improved in that area, even if there's still a long ways for it to go, especially with Kubernetes. But yeah, it's definitely like Cloud Functions. It can be amazing just how quick stuff can get deployed out there. Yeah, exactly. Like Ted was saying, like, yeah, I mean, 6 months is probably optimistic. That's just for dev. For production, that's like a year or 2 years to actually get like some new server space out there, get like a new application deployed.
Yeah, it can. I remember those days. It's like, you need more capacity. It's like, fill out these 3 TPS reports and we'll get back to you. It's like, oh, okay. I guess that's what we do here. But it's it kind of a lot of the things that I've seen developers have trouble with is understanding. And again, this cuts from the Java world to everything else. Understanding how to get stuff on the cloud and like manage all the configuration. Of course, we have fancy terms today like GitOps, for example.
Yeah.
Right? So you kind of base everything around checking in configuration into Git, and of course that all that gets fed into a CI and CD pipeline that helps you kind of more seamlessly go and deploy stuff onto the cloud or test or whatever. So it's we definitely, it's better than it used to be deploying to the cloud. We have a lot more tools, but there's always a flip side to those tools, which is like, what are all these hammers I have in my back now?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Whatever, right? It's like, now I have all these constellation of new tools. How do I figure all this stuff out? And what am I supposed to use? And do I really need to write a Kubernetes operator? All those tough questions, right? The answer to that question, by the way, do I need to write a Kubernetes operator, is
always no.
Always no.
Yeah. Actually,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Like you were talking about GitOps. And so like my first real experience with that was actually like last year when I was helping to put together a course where we touched on GitOps. And so if anyone wants to mention it in the chat, they kind of worked with GitOps in a production setting, I'll be interested to hear how it goes. It's one of those things that sounds good and interesting in theory. I do kind of wonder how all of it would work in practice. I've known and seen a couple of people maybe tease a little bit at it on Twitter, and I'd just be kind of curious to see if anyone has their own thoughts of having used GitOps, or have you done anything more than like a simple POC with GitOps yet, Pratik? Or
I mean, I have some stuff around like kind of the basic GitOps, checking the config files. Most of that is just wrestling with YAML, to be honest with you. But that's a diatribe for maybe later in the conversation. So I have a little bit of experience with that, and it's I think it's definitely the more declarative you can be around what your application looks like and what the application deployment looks like and the application configuration looks like, and putting that all into Git and kind of rolling that into a place which is easily manageable for doing especially things like rollbacks. Or just making small incremental changes, or if you're crazy, large changes. It's definitely helpful to have all that very well documented in a place where you can actually go back and say, oh, I forgot to add that extra space in the YAML file. That's why it doesn't work. So.
Speaking of which, I just thought I would have to share. So our mutual friend Bruno, who is particularly disliking of YAML, which definitely the more you get to use YAML, the more you hate it. But I thought this is pretty funny, where it's one of those little trends where you type in like CEO of, and then you would let Twitter autocomplete it. Anyways, he became CEO of YAML. So I'm sure he was very, as I kind of joked about it here in my response, unhappy with that. Mine was a lot less cool, though, or maybe it was more cool. I'm not sure. So let's see. Our CEO. Hopefully, this will just pull it up. No, not it.
It's a Twitter search failed. Oh well.
Exactly. Well, anyways, mine came up with a CEO of Wonder Bread. So.
Oh yeah, I saw that tweet.
Yeah. I don't even eat it, but
very apropos, but a little annoying.
I guess. Oh yeah.
So just one other couple of things that I wanted to say about kind of deploying to the cloud. There was a trend kind of early in the cloud days where folks were saying, since this is a Java stream, folks were saying out in the world that, oh yeah, you want to use Java because it's kind of heavy and it's kind of slow, and you should write everything in Go, and then you're like, oh okay, or write in Node.js. You're like, oh okay, and then some people would say, oh yeah, we do everything in Python, and I'm like, actually, isn't Python usually slower than Java most of the time or something? Anyways,
yeah.
So one thing I want to specifically address to the audience is that today there is no valid reason for you to not use Java for building cloud stuff. With the newer versions of Java and the great Java virtual machines which are out there, which you can use to deploy to the cloud, it's unless you like splitting a hair, or unless you're like a real computer nerd and you like to do premature optimization.
Yeah.
What's that saying go like, Billy? The one about premature optimization.
I mean,
what is it? Something like it's like a developer joke, like premature optimization is the root of all evil, or something like that, right? So I think, like, if you're a Java dev, or like if someone on your team says, oh, we can't use Java on the cloud, for Kubernetes or for cloud functions, then kind of just say, are you sure about that? Because modern versions of Java are pretty good, right? And I don't know. You tell me. You work at the Oracle, and you all put out like the JVM. So what
I mean, even before joining Oracle, like, I always kind of thought that, like, some of the complaints about most any language were a bit silly, just because, a lot of times when, like, you're experiencing slowness or stuff like that, like, it's almost like, I want to say all the time, but very, 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 very often, like the 99% of the times, it's because probably something like just the way you coded it, like maybe you're doing, like, you have like a call within like a loop, and you're doing that call a bunch of times instead of batching the call. And then particularly because you're probably waiting on network issues, like you're making a call to a database, or you're making a call to like an external service, and then it has to go over the wire, it has to do all this stuff and all these different things. And it might be going all the way, 1,000 miles away, maybe multiple 1,000 miles away, depending on what's going on. And it's really, and obviously at that point, that's not the JVM, but that's not any programming language that's being slow. That's just depending upon the network. And so it's, very much kind of what you're saying, this premature optimization, or it's maybe looking at these optimizations in the wrong areas of, like, oh, we're waiting on the Java machine or the JVM, or we're waiting on Go or C, or any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that, like, at very, huge scale, that there aren't organizations that are extremely concerned with, like, where getting that small amount more performance would actually make a real big difference in, like, their AWS bill or OCI bill.
There you
go. Yeah, exactly. Whatever it might be. At which point, where the language you're using might matter, or, very low level stuff might actually be affecting it. But yeah, I think there's just, for the vast majority of application developers out there at almost every other organization, at every other enterprise I actually worked at, where, like, the if we wanted to be optimizing, like, it would be looking at those kind of issues. It would not be the language that we're using or the way we're deploying or something like that. It's it reminds me of this funny story where I went golfing with a couple of my friends, and at my time, my boss, and he went to college on a golf scholarship. And, like, he didn't go pro or anything like that, but obviously he was a very good golfer. I'm a terrible golfer. My friend, he was okay, but again, didn't go to scholarship on a golfing scholarship, or didn't go to college on a golfing scholarship. But so, anyways, my friend was kind of just like shanking the ball a bit, and so my boss goes, "Oh, hey, give me that club," and then, just hits it like 300-400 yards, or I don't know, maybe 300 yards, 400 yards. That would be probably Tiger Woods out there then.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's Tiger Woods level.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, he hits it. He just, drills it very far. And he's just like, it's not the club. And so, like, the story there is that, you may see some demonstration out there of, like, oh, look how fast Node is, or look how fast C++ is, or whatever it might be at doing this thing. But it might be because at applications just heavily designed to really take advantage of those, that performance, or it may not be even that realistic. of a performance example. So like that's just kind of what I think is that so often people get very caught up in the tool when they're maybe should take some more time to make sure that they're designing their applications well.
Well, I think there's a couple of things on top of what you said, which really kind of cement that Java is a great platform for the cloud.
Yeah.
So I like your golf club example.
Yeah.
I had a friend when I was at university, and she insisted on teaching me how to play tennis. Now, I played before, but she was like, she was very good. I think she may have been on a scholarship, tennis scholarship, right? And I was like,
and that friend was Serena Williams.
That's right. Not quite. Even though I was at the University of North Carolina at the same time Mia Hamm was playing there. So anyways, different story. So we go down to the local tennis shop, and I'm looking at rackets, and I'm looking at like, $200 rackets and, $300 rackets. And she's like, no, let's go look over here at like the basic rackets. I'm like, yeah, but then how am I supposed to be any good if I don't have a $300 racket? And she was like, you know what? I could probably play with a ping pong paddle and beat you. So let's just go look at these other rackets over here. So
yeah.
Anyways, beat me in tennis, not ping pong. I will destroy somebody in ping pong. Destroy you altogether.
Yeah.
So. Anyways, the first point around the Java in the cloud is that every release of the Java virtual machine, right, from 8 to 9, 10, 11, et cetera, the JVM itself just gets much, much better.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you notice it. Like,
yeah.
I was running some stuff the other day, and I had mistakenly been running Java 8 because, my Java home was set to Java 8, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then I realized after a while, I was like, let me go switch to Java 11. And then I start the thing back up, and it's like noticeably faster starting up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people don't realize that is another reason to upgrade to newer versions of Java, aside from all the great language features, is you get like literally for free this performance boost at startup time and also at runtime, because the JVM engineers around the world are always pushing the envelope to make the performance better, and all those kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the first thing with Java on cloud. The other thing is that there are fancy new frameworks which are designed to be a little bit more cloud friendly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So two that come to mind are Quarkus and Micronaut.
Yeah.
For example.
Man, Josh is going to be so upset with you later on.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I know. Go, definitely.
In all fairness, the Spring people.
Wait, why did you just jump on the stream right now? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Bring him up. In all fairness, to the Spring folks, Spring now also supports native image.
Yep.
So they are also going to be playing in that same ballpark soon too, where Spring will have the ability to run for cloud even better than it already does, right? But anyways, my point is that in like a Micronaut or a Quarkus application, or with the latest and greatest Spring Boot application frameworks, they all have amazing startup times and lower memory utilization, and et cetera, all those things. And I'm going to throw in a third one just for bonus here, right? The third point I want to make is that for a long time, the folks in the Node.js world would talk about how they would have the ability to run like 10,000 concurrent threads on a single core, mm-hmm. because of their event loop driven architecture. That's kind of core in Node, right? It's an event loop type of thing. But if you're in the Java world and someone on your team says, oh, look at Node, it's got this event loop, it can support 10,000 concurrent requests on a single core. And you can go to them and say, well, we can do the same thing in Java.
Yeah.
Right? What do we use to do that? Reactive programming.
Yeah.
And there's several great reactive programming libraries, right? Whether it's microprofile reactive, or if you're using Spring Reactor, it's the stuff is there, or RX Java.
Yeah.
What's the other one that is kind of popular? Did I miss one?
Vertex.
Vertex. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the other one I was thinking of. That's right. So we can do the same kinds of things that folks in the Node world can do with their, in Node they call it event loop, and it's a very specific implementation of reactive. The implementations of reactive in the Java world are very similar, but they have a little bit of nuance to them. But anyways, the point is that if, again, cloud performance, your app running in the cloud and having great response times, lower memory utilization, you can do all these, with the first two things we talked about, and then kind of the icing on the cake is you can build all this in a reactive style. Mm-hmm. And you can, really get some, basically squeeze as much horsepower out of your cloud deployments and servers as possible. So we have all the tools to do that stuff today. Yeah. And of course, we all love Java because statically typed, great tooling, like a gazillion different libraries to do anything you want.
The ecosystem of Java simply can't be beat. But also, I mean, you're talking about reactive programming, but one of those things is kind of with going to that reactive style, like you have to kind of change a lot of the ways you want to work on things. And soon enough, Loom, as it actually gets integrated into the main line. So if you're a Java developer, you've heard of Loom here or there. But pretty much what it's going to do is like thread allocation currently in the JVM. Like I think it directly thread allocates based upon what's on the CPU, which is very resource heavy. And a lot of times it may not be using that thread. So Loom is going to create like a virtual thread, which can then kind of shard off, I guess, those different threads to where if it's not actually being used, like that thread is still kind of there as far as the JVM is concerned, but it's just not actively being allocated to that CPU. So that way you can actually have those, tens of thousands concurrents of requests you could be working with, and it can have to be all within the different threads, but it won't actually have to go to a reactive style if you don't want to. And I think also
excited about that, man. So
yeah, same here.
You can write all your code in the current synchronous style, but get like, let's say 80 or 90% of reactive benefits for free.
Yeah,
it's like sounds like a good deal to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the also things I do want to go back and touch on a little bit when I was like making like the golf analogy or kind of talking about like other things besides like the underlying programming language is why your code is running slow. And I was just say like you can go by pretty much any metric, and like Java is now pretty much as close to as fast as like C or C++ on almost any real world metric as far as performance goes, and that could be performance based upon throughput, memory usage, and those different areas. Yeah, exactly. That's another joke Ted was making. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to wait for reactive. I'm going to do reactive. I'm just going to wait for Loom. But by almost any metric, Java is like one of the most performant languages out there. Maybe like the most comparatively slowest area would be startup. But again, that's just something that the JVM folks are continually working towards. And of course, we also have things like native image, which you're kind of touching on with like our Josh will be talking about with Spring Native, and you're kind of touching on with Quarkus and Micronaut, which also take advantage of the Grow native image. So it's not like hey, we're not that great when it comes to startup, but hey, we got great. Like it's like there's no area where like the JDK developers are kind of just sitting put and like, hey, we're good enough here. We're just gonna go home now. Like you said, like if for no other reason you should consider moving up to the more recent versions of Java is because there's been significant improvements in the JVM. Like every release, there's going to be a few improvements to the JVM, some big, some small. Like some of that stuff, it won't necessarily make it into the big overhead JEPs. I was kind of doing some work with App CDS, and I kind of noticed like a little issue where it wasn't getting as much of a performance boost boost with Spring Boot. And, at some point, so like a bug request was filed with that. And I haven't particularly followed it, but, at some point that's going to get fixed, and that's not going to be, a big announcement like, hey, Boot will, or Spring Boot will start up, a tenth of a second faster, now. But like that's something that's going to be probably put in, hopefully at some point within one of the future releases. And you'll just notice that performance of like whether it's Java 18, Java 19, or sometime later when that gets added, you just have that slightly faster performance boost when you're using Spring Boot, or the underlying issue that was kind of having to do with like dynamic class loading or something like that was kind of affecting it. But that just gets added with like every new release. So definitely a reason to keep on the latest.
Yeah, and there's a ton of innovation going on the Java Virtual Machine, and not just at Oracle. There are other companies out there, like the Eclipse OpenJ9 project, as well as Azul. They're all doing innovation. A lot of those innovations that they're doing get contributed back to OpenJDK also. But to kind of take this in almost a completely direction for a second. There's some innovation happening that is actually outside of the context of the JVM when we're talking about Java on cloud, or just apps on cloud in general, and that is CRIU technology, where you fire something up and you get it to a state where using the example of Java, you have your Java Spring Boot app or whatever up and running, and you take a memory snapshot of that. And that's stored away. And so then, again, using this, it's called CRIU, using that capability where you've snapshotted that application to a warm state. Yeah. Basically just restored from memory. Yeah. Like there's like no startup time thing, right? It basically, well, there is. Obviously, you have to go and serialize off of disk back into memory when you want to start instances of that. Right, but that's something that's really interesting, because like in a cube environment, for example, you could have the CRIU image, which depending on how much RAM you've allocated to it, let's say it's 128 meg or 256 meg. If you have that CRIU snapshot locally or close to, let's say, the place where you're running your Kubernetes cluster, that means it could like basically load like that, right? Because it's pretty fast to do a read off of disk and spool it into memory and then start a process up. So anyway, my point is there's tons of interesting stuff going on at the intersection of like Java and cloud, for tackling problems like startup time, right? There's obviously GraalVM, there's CRIU, and then there's that we've been talking about with the just the improvements in just the Java Virtual Machine that make things better every release, essentially.
No, there's definitely just a lot of ongoing improvements to it. I definitely remember back when Java 9 was being released, I was doing a few presentations on it, and like I remember one of the big JVM improvements within that was string compactization. And where basically the underlying way that strings are stored was as a char, but they found that our char, or was it a byte? Which other way? It was found that like how it was being stored, it was for Unicode support, but the vast majority of strings were ASCII using ASCII characters, and pretty much it's like, as long as it's like all ASCII characters, then it would be stored in this more simpler form, which would save huge amounts of memory. It's like, and it's not like you have to make any changes to do that. You would just get that, and like you would save like a very significant amount of memory just from updating to, at the time, Java 9, which of course is still within the JVM in more recent versions. So yeah, it is pretty surprising, this amount of work that's being done to continually update and improve the JVM. And then, like I said, there's still things coming up ahead with like CRIU, which will allow for instant start without some of the drawbacks that native images has. Of course, like I said, there's native image. It does have some drawbacks, as you can't really make as much use out of reflection and those things. But there's stuff. It's not like by any means is the Java ecosystem dead, or there's no more ideas on what to do.
Right.
We've heard that for a long time. But yeah,
every few years, you see that article written by somebody. Oh, Java's dead.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I think one of the things for sure.
Do you go to the hospital? Right? Do you go to the hospital? Do you use a bank? It's like all that stuff is running on Java Tech. Java underneath the hood. So yeah.
I remember I saw like a question on Reddit, on the Java subreddit, about whether or not like it's now a good time to learn Java. And I guess like the actual nature of the question was a little bit different from like what it sounded like in the title, but it's just like, but yeah, it's still like if you're in school right now, even if you're a fresh, like, it's definitely still absolutely worth it to learn Java. Because like even if like no new development whatsoever took place with Java, the amount of current Java written is going to be around for just decades. I mean, look how much COBOL is still around. Yeah. And to think about, and like, I don't know what, like in the 90s is when like all generally active new COBOL development ended. Like, I don't think many new projects started with COBOL, once we got to the 2000s. But yet, even now, at least 2 decades, 3 decades plus later, since the last time many new projects have started COBOL, and it's still around. And just think about how much software development has grown in that time, much of it, during that time when Java has been like the most popular language. Like, it's just billions, trillions of lines of code written in Java, and that's all doing vital business processes. So like, even if like no new software development happens in Java, like even like if you just got out of college now, or you're just getting into college now, like you could probably still have a whole career as a Java developer, just maintaining the current code until you retire. And it's like, there's still, Java is still going to be an exciting field where there's going to be still many new projects written, but it's just very funny. The Java's dead. Like, no.
no, it's not. If anything, I think that in light of all of the rising popularity of things like Go and Node, and Python has always been popular. Mm-hmm. But even thinking about, like, if you look at the TOB index or whatever, you see that the kind of the adoption of Java curve is always it's like pretty constant, right? It's not like going down necessarily. So and especially with the support, great support for different environments like we were talking about, like on the cloud. And I know that there are folks using Java to write cloud functions, right? Yeah. Whether it's with something like Quarkus, or whether they're using, for example, the Spring Cloud Functions. Basically, Spring Cloud Functions is like a slimmed down version of the full Spring Boot that's specifically meant for deploying into Cloud Functions. And Cloud Functions again are at the apex of that pyramid. Mm-hmm. So you want Cloud Functions have to have low footprint, and typically you want very, very, very low startup time. Because of just the way Cloud Functions and serverless architecture is, and when I think about that, and like the advances just in the last 5 years in terms of being able to take a Java application and use it really well, right, as good as any other platform for Cloud Functions. It's like, well, it's I've talked to developers in just the last year where they are building out these massively parallel, scalable Cloud Functions all in Java, and they're doing it with great success. So it's definitely it's definitely there. So
and a little bit going back to the Java is dead. I think one thing I also remember. Well, I was mentioned, like, I did a few presentations on Java 9 when it was coming out. And during that research, one of the things I saw was the discussion around of moving, at the time the discussion was about whether to move Java from a to an annual or a biannual release cadence, or obviously ended up with a biannual and every 6 month release cadence. And I think that's one of the things that also has really helped improve, because I do kind of remember like at the times like that was 2017, and like so there hadn't been a release since Java 8, and it seemed like with JavaScript there was like a new framework and a new release and a new update happening like every 2 months or something. And C# seemed like, and .NET Core was like also doing like new releases and stuff like that. So I think that change to doing a 6-month release cadence has really kind of helped with that. And I do also know like the people, like the architects at the OpenJDK team, have talked about how now they have to worry a whole lot less about releases, just because like it's already all kind of set up beforehand. It's not like a bunch of time figuring out what is going to be added in. Should we delay it to get this added in? Just because now it's like, oh, okay, if this feature doesn't make it into this release, okay, we can just, wait a few months and this is going to get into like, JDK 18. So it's not like, oh my God, I think like pattern matching for arrays and records, which sounds really cool. It will only be a preview feature. Like I was hoping it was going to make it into like Java 17, just so it could be something I could talk about for some presentations. But it looks like it's probably not going to make it. But it's like, okay, well, it's just going to be in Java 18 for a couple, and it's going to be a couple of times where it's going to be a preview status. And so maybe probably about Java 20 is when it's going to be a normal feature that you can just use in production without having to set the preview feature flags. But they don't have to spend a whole lot of time thinking. So which again gives them just that much more time to actually then focus on adding those new language features and things like that. And actually one of the biggest language features, like I said, I was kind of commenting yesterday, it's not really a bold prediction because a lot of people have said it, but like records is going to probably be like one of the biggest things since Lambda has come to Java, where it's going to be very.
A bold statement.
I think so, because
Lambda's in Java. That was a big deal, man. That's like kind of earth shaking. Lambda's in Java. So interesting.
I think it'll be up there because it makes it that much easier to do modeling of data. But beyond that, like there's a huge amount. It's not just like syntactic sugar of like, oh, I can define like a new data carrier class in a single line. It's also because records have a very prescribed way of how they have to work, and it's actually not just a Java class, it's actually a record. Like that's what its root object is, and so frameworks can also then build off of that based upon those assumptions. It can't just like hope it's a record. It actually knows for sure. It's like, oh no, this is Java lang record as its super object. So that allows those frameworks then to know that like, okay, it's going to have a constructor that has all the fields for the class within it. So it can do that and doesn't have to worry about doing any reflection. So I think there's going to be a lot of, not only is it going to make code cleaner and nicer and easier to work with, but there's also going to be real performance improvements, just kind of with Lambdas, where it wasn't just like, oh, hey, I can like write out this thing that can go through like this stream in all one line and make it look a whole lot nicer and cleaner and easier. But like there's actual real runtime benefits to doing that as well. So I think that's going to be really interesting.
You actually bring up a really interesting point. It had not occurred to me yet until you started talking about this. Mm-hmm. But I wonder how JPA, Java Persistence API, I wonder how it will use records to like make JPA better, for example. I'm sure those teams like the JPA spec team and the folks who implement the open source JPA implementations. Mm-hmm. I wonder how they're looking at records and thinking how they could like use that all the great stuff in records for that kind of stuff. Oh.
Yeah, I imagine it could be very helpful. It could also be one of those areas where that could be a bit more difficult, just because with records, like one big thing about them is that they're immutable. And a lot of times with like the JPA stuff, you do want some mutability. You want to be able to like, oh, I updated this record in a database, and now I want to get the new ID to update it.
Right.
But it could still be beneficial there, depending on maybe how you have that stuff set up. So yeah, it would definitely be interesting. There's definitely a lot of areas where it could be helpful, but also it's one of those things like to keep in mind. It's not like, oh, now every data model class needs to be a record. Well, that may not actually work, because in some cases you actually do want to have that mutability. You want to be able to update a field within it, which case you can't really do that with a record. You have to create like a new instance, which either, you may not be getting that improvement in from runtime, or it's just going to look really weird in the code that
Well, you kind of what you just said, it brought something to my mind that I've seen happen in the Clojure world, right? Clojure, for those of you who don't know it, it's a Lisp that runs on the JVM, and they have solved that problem of having immutable data structures without having any performance loss, by essentially doing keeping original objects, and as you change those objects, it doesn't do like a deep copy. It just basically keeps it and like wraps and wraps and wraps as you change those.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if there's something that could be done, kind of like maybe it's already being done. I don't know. I haven't looked into this specifically, right? Because you literally just made it pop into my brain, Bill.
Exactly. I haven't done all the research in the last 2 minutes.
That's right. But because the Clojure data structures are immutable as you're working with them, because it fits into their model of how Lisp is supposed to work. And so I wonder if using the same approach that they did in the Clojure world, where instead of on the Java side you have records which are immutable, and then when you want to change something in a record object, instead of copying it basically on creation, copy, update, create the new record object, just keeping the old record object, and then kind of, I don't know, like wrapping isn't the right word, but encapsulating it somehow, so that obviously then you have to think about if the data that's captured in the record is large data, and then you just keep a copy, you always keep it around as you're working and modifying it. I don't know. It just those smart folks over there have figured it out. I bet you there's probably some interesting stuff that could be learned in terms of how the same kind of working with immutability in the JVM could be used.
Yeah, no, I've kind of wondered that as well. If at some point, like I probably really should look a little bit more closely at like the mailing list to see if there is any further plans or any thoughts of like the next step after like some sort of record that could then actually also like just be directly mutable. Just because, like, it's not just, I mean, it is about the modeling data, and there's reasons why they did the immutability, but like, there's also the fact that there's certain guarantees with records that it has to have a canonical constructor. That is a constructor that has like all the different fields within it. It has to have accessors this way, and I just wonder then also, is there some way of creating like another kind of object or kind of feature within Java that has like a mutable record, but then also has certain guarantees that then libraries can also be built upon. And I don't know. I haven't been following the mail.
I don't think the record has to be mutable. I think
it's mutable. It is.
I'm just saying.
Okay,
I'm just saying. I don't think you have to create a mutable record.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you do is you have something within the records API or whatever, right? Somewhere around the records API, let's say, where if you do need to change something, you make a very specific method call saying that I want to create a new record based on this record, but I want to update this field or these fields with it.
Yeah.
Right? So what you're doing is you're keeping the original record. It's still immutable. Record object, let's be specific. And then you're creating a new record object based on the old record object. So you still have immutability. And if you want to, so you're not violating immutability. You're creating a new object that's somehow based on the old object. But anyways, I'm just kind of thinking aloud here. Because that's what you told me to do. You said, come here and just ask you crazy questions and come up with crazy ideas. So
Exactly. No, that's good.
hopefully the Java team is listening to this. The
I'm
Java team
sure
over
they're
at Oracle.
Yeah, I'm sure they're hanging on every word. I'm sure Mark Reinhold and Brian Getz are furiously taking. Ooh,
That's right. They should be.
I didn't think of this before.
Exactly.
I'm glad these two guys are talking.
That's right. And they haven't even started drinking yet. Wait, what's going to happen once they start popping some beers? It's going to get crazy, right?
Yeah, I know, definitely. All right.
So let me think. What else? We're coming up to the bottom of the hour.
Yeah.
And we talked a bit about like Java on Cloud and how it's a great choice and JVMs. We talked about like kind of running in cloud functions also. We talked about some frameworks that help you do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to make sure that I haven't missed anything really super interesting around like that kind of Java and cloud ecosystem, because that was kind of the theme that we built up here.
Yeah.
So. Oh, I know we were joking earlier about Kubernetes operators, but apparently the ability to write Kubernetes operators with Java, and I could be wrong, but I hear that it's actually coming. I think the folks over at Red Hat are working on something like that, or maybe somebody else. I don't know, but it's like, ooh, I can just write Kubernetes kube operators now in Java. It's a very dangerous tool to give me. So I think of there are different types of tools, right? You have your hammer, you have your screwdriver, and I think the being able to write Kubernetes operators in Java is like maybe the chainsaw tool. Does that sound about right? It's something that can be very dangerous if not handled properly.
Yes, very.
Like you've given me too much power now, right? To be able to go in and write operators in Cube in Java, because it would be so easy for me to do that rather than having to wrestle. Well, Go is a great language, and when I say wrestle, I mean it very lightly. But yeah, it's definitely pretty cool, all the stuff that's going on in our area of Java and cloud. So
yeah, absolutely. Hold on 1 second. I'm just sending out a quick little tweet here.
We got Josh coming on shortly.
Yes.
Oh boy. Let me go get my seatbelt on.
Exactly.
I thought if you thought I was talking fast, just wait 5 minutes until Josh gets on. And then
I know. I kind of remember when I saw my first Josh Long presentation, and like that's when I first heard about Spring Boot, and I just my mind melted. I had to reset after that presentation where I just I had no idea what happened. I like it, but I have no idea what happened.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So we got KCDC coming up.
Yes.
Right? We'll have some Java content at that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, in person.
Yes.
In-person stuff coming up. The only other event I know that's happening in person in the Java universe this year, well, it's two that I know of. There's Java Zone in Norway, but I don't know if we'll be able to go over there, with the COVID situation, international travel, etc. But in the U.S., jconf.dev I know is happening in person in Chicago at the first week of December.
Nice.
So we, at least we have those two events to look forward to.
Yes.
And of course, there's all the online events and stuff like that. But I think you said this before, Billy. It's I think most everybody is getting a little bit exhausted with online events now. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah. At least I take it that's the reason why maybe the attendance isn't quite as high as I'd hope with our typical Casey Jug meetup. That it's just I really kind of wish we would get more than 10 people to show.
That's right. So for those of you who don't know, I'm part of the Atlanta Java user group here, and we have been seeing a slow decline
Yeah.
with the number of people coming to the online Atlanta Java user group meetups that we've been having. And some of it may also be that the weather's getting better and we're heading into summer and, et cetera, et cetera. But I think people are ready to go out and high five each other and, just do stupid tequila shot games. I don't know, whatever folks do when they get together in person, or, argue about, whether you should be using, whether you should be using Java 15 or 16. It's much, those discussions are much better in person, I've found. So
Yeah. I think that's also the problem, as Ted kind of pointed out. There's just a lot of options to choose from, so I think that's probably a bit of it. I know. I personally kind of just feel exhausted from being at home all the time. It's getting a lot better, as we were kind of talking about a little bit earlier, with vaccinations, at least in the U.S., kind of getting a lot better with the rollout, that you can actually go to see people in it face to face again. Because I do kind of remember that at some points during the pandemic, where it's just I remember those first couple of months where it just felt like the weeks are just breezing by. It just be like, wait, it's Friday. Wait, it's third. It was so weird just how they were just going by. Just because all you would do is just you get up, go to work, go back to the weekends and the weeks wouldn't be much.
By go to work, you mean roll out of your bedroom and into
exactly
whatever space you worked in. So yeah.
Actually, I think one thing I kind of got better at recently is for a while I was oh, cool. Okay. All right. I'm going to add Josh in here.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And Josh, if you want to, exactly, if you want to add in your, turn on your webcam as well so we can see you.
Ted said, can't wait to argue about TDD in person. Well, yeah. Ted, my favorite saying is, I don't normally test, but when I do, I test on production. So
yeah, exactly.
So I'm not like Billy. Billy's good at he talks about JUnit 5 and all that kind of stuff. And oh yeah, that's all great, but I test on production.
Exactly. That's all we're good at testing done. Like the users test, right, Josh?
Oh yeah. Hi. Good afternoon or morning.
Hey, Josh. Long time no see. How are you doing?
Long time. Oh my
god. Before you go though, Pratik, I do want to. The most recent
Nike,
the Nexus
T-shirt. Nice. Hey, Josh, how's the weather out in California?
Oh, we'll survive.
It's 72 degrees and sunny. Okay,
exactly.
It's a little below that, but it's not like I could go outside and wear this. It'd be a little windy, but not cold.
Yeah,
I got you. Sounds good. All right, well, Billy, thanks for having me on. This was fun.
Thank you for coming, Pratik.
So, and go easy on Josh. Will you okay?
I will try to.
Bye, Pratik. Nice to see you again.
See y'all.
See ya.
Yeah, I miss both of you, human beings, in person. This online thing is not.
It's not the same. It's definitely not the same. It's much more fun to see and talk with people in person and get that live feedback. At least we're getting a little bit here. We can kind of see each other face to face, sort of through the screen. I do know that the pain of just giving a presentation and you can't really see anyone, it just makes it harder. It's like, wait, was that joke bad, or is it just everyone's laughing muted?
That's where I don't need the extra help, because I already know it's bad. There's no need for the answer to that question. And so in that respect, I haven't really had any issues. What I miss is just the random happenings that you can't plan. Don't get me wrong. There's been a lot of great strides in what people are doing to make it better to be able to congregate online. So for example, this spatial.io chat where you can pin your avatar, get next to other people in this virtual room, and you can actually hear each other, but you can't hear other people on the other side of the room. That's pretty cool. And if conferences are able, or if it's small enough, or if you're doing a thing like that, they can send booze home to you. So the problems, we can get past a lot of them, but I just miss that.
The hallway track. The hallway track, or the attendee party and speakers party, that's just, there's those conversations that it can never quite be the same. online, especially when like you don't have like a pre-existing real, like we know each other from before, so it's like we can just talk about random things. But it's much harder online. It's like, hey, person I don't know, let's talk about this other random thing. It's usually not quite as easy or as natural. You can't just like hop in on a conversation or something like that.
Those spatial chats, you can with that. And actually, that's what I really like about it is that I hope people will just put their avatar next to me and let's spark a conversation. But you're right. Maybe there's some trepidation associated with it. I don't know. I would think it'd be easier to talk to somebody online than it would be in the actual room with them, if I were any kind of intimidated. But I don't know. But so while that's all been very good, I do miss getting together. And what's interesting is there's a different deficit for different groups of people. So while here in the States, things seem cautiously, optimistically, don't want to go too far, but seems to be ticking in the right direction. Trending in the right direction. I don't think we're there, certainly, but we're going, right? We're on the path. But some countries, they just didn't have a pandemic at all. It was just 2020 for them. They didn't like Taiwan they slept through the whole thing. They didn't even know. They're having a bad surge right now. For the first time. And so for them, they didn't really want for that. Well, I'm sure they missed international visitors, but basically life was the same for whole countries out there. It's so stunning. To me, it feels like the, what was that called in the Snap in the Marvel movies where like we disappeared for 5 years.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
There's whole swaths of populations that are coming back online as though it was 2019.
Yeah.
And what happened in 2020? Nobody knows. It's all just a mystery.
Yeah, it's going to be a mysteriously long and short year when you're thinking about it. And it is kind of funny when like talking with people, it's like, oh, last year, 2019, and not 2020. But so I will say that I guess you weren't watching the live stream, which I understand. But if you had been, I'm sure you would have been hopping on here much sooner, or in the comment section where Pratik was singing the praises of Micronaut and Quarkus when it comes to startup. But I think you may have something to talk about here from the Spring perspective, attacking the startup time issue.
I have absolutely nothing to offer there. I don't. What are those things? I don't know. I don't care. Quarkus has done some amazing things with Hibernate, which makes me, that's really impressive. I didn't think you could make Hibernate that quick. So, to be fair, that's legit. But that's not the thing I think is most compelling. Any discussion of native images that focuses on startup speed is, I don't know. I've never understood it. Maybe someday, one day, somebody will present to me a use case that matters. But it's the memory footprint that I cannot get over. That is really the hot sauce there, right? If we talk about startup, startup performance, serverless, all that, I think, okay, I don't know who's doing this. Who's moving their entire architecture to optimize for scale to zero, right?
Yeah.
Scale to zero is architecture change, right? That's a whole different thing. It's super expensive. Whereas running just one instance and scaling to one and scaling up if you need to, that you can do today with nothing, right? No change at all. And how much does it cost to run one instance of your JVM app? Like Heroku can do it for like $7 a month. So I just don't get the motivation to rewrite in terms of functions and serverless and all that. And by the way, I do like functions. I actually do quite like the paradigm because I'm a messaging guy, right? My whole background was messaging and event-driven architectures and all that. So in that gives people a reason to focus on events in their system. I think it's a worthwhile exercise, but scaling to zero is just I don't get it. I don't understand.
For a moment there, I was about to say like, hey, everyone, that last hour conversation, just forget.
No, I just don't. But that's just not to me where the market is, right? It's not to me, the real opportunity here is taking advantage of eventing in your system, which you can do without rewriting everything to be, what would you have to use to get, like, what's the fastest compiled startup time on the market today? C or Rust, maybe? I just don't know, right?
Yeah.
And so, sure, that's fine. If you want to rewrite everything, that's your prerogative, I guess. But I don't see why that's all that valuable. What I care about is suppose I'm trying to get software into production, and today production is often is not as a cloud, it's Kubernetes, it's something like that. What can I do to mitigate my footprint, right? To minimize my footprint? And GraalVM images, that's pretty dynamite, right? That's pretty great. It's just good stuff.
Nice. So yeah, definitely. So at least one of the things we're going to talk was Spring Native image. So I just don't know if you want to kind of I've only played with it just a little bit so far. But yeah, do you want to? Also, did you want to share your screen at all? Is there anything you wanted to
Can I share my screen?
Yeah, at the bottom center, you should be able to do a share. And
there it is.
Let's see.
Share.
Cool. There you go.
Neat. Okay, well, let's see. Okay, so the idea behind Spring Native, we have this project called Spring Native, right? Mm-hmm. And so we've done a ton of things to make Spring robust for production. We care about production. That's always been our number one concern. And so while we have, I think, very much sort of met the use cases that people have, if you want to do serverless, you can. We have Spring Cloud Function. If you want to do microservices, well, I dare you to find a better stack on any platform, any language, anywhere than Spring and Spring Boot and Spring Cloud. If you wanted to do monoliths, certainly people have done that for decades now. I mean, we're there where people want to go on the server side, and so there's this new paradigm, this new frontier that is really, I think, quite interesting, right? This native image thing, and that uses GraalVM. Now, GraalVM is an OpenJDK distribution that has some extras in it, right? And these extras are pretty neat. One of them is a native image builder. The other one's a polyglot support, the polyglot virtual machine support. So there's some really interesting extensions there. Though that said, I don't. I kind of wonder what would have happened had Microsoft or somebody else forked OpenJDK and added these extensions instead. It's right now the situation for me, the GraalVM versus OpenJDK schism, the divide there is very, So I'm also very excited about Layden. I wonder what's going to happen there. When will that converge? It looks like, I don't know if that's going to be based on Graal. I have no idea, but either way, for now, it looks like GraalVM is the native image support in GraalVM is the way to go for the moment. So
even on the inside, it's still pretty confusing. And I know Layden, it's an idea about an idea. It hasn't truly come to fruition yet. So it's still some ways down. I want to pin any hopes on an immediate future when it comes to Layden. But go ahead.
And that's okay, because the GraalVM team is kicking butt, and there's work being done to support. Is it 16 or 17 already in Graal? So I think you can already
16.
Yeah, so it's fine, right? I'm not really actually complaining. I'm just wondering when that picture will get reconciled. But for the moment, we are lucky to have an abundance of choice. Our cup runneth over, to borrow. So I don't know. I'm just really excited. By the way, it's the 26th. When's the actual proper date? Do we have it? Is it just the whole year's 26th anniversary, or do we have a month or whatever?
The proper date, actually, I believe, was last week. Hold on, I think the 13th, or no, not the 13th. Actually, I did put it into my phone. Oh, the 23rd. That's right. So it was actually last Saturday was the official 26th birthday of Java.
Cool.
Yeah.
So Spring, I was looking. There's this class in the Spring ecosystem called the JDBC template, which it's just been there forever. It's been there actually as of the 3rd May of this year, 20 years. It's a 20-year-old class, right? It's been in the code for 20 years. And I just thought 3 May, that was 20 years, man. And Java is now 26 years old. I mean, there's these institutional things, right, that are out there.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just so wonderful that we can actually build things that survive the sort of violence of evolution, the trauma of growth and paradigm shifts and so on. Java has been amazing. It's just pure gold. It's I still don't. I love the JVM ecosystem, and I'm so grateful that they give us access to Java. I don't know why they do it. Even I don't know why. I mean, I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong, but I still don't. It's billions of dollars of R&D, I imagine, over 26 plus years.
Yeah.
Poured into this amazing piece of infrastructure, and they just give it away. And it is just such a wonderful, cool thing that I'm grateful for every day. There's not a day that goes by where I'm not grateful for the Java team. They are first class. So. And Java, and obviously Spring. I'm wearing a Spring T-shirt, but without the JVM, what is Spring, right? It's just an abstract idea.
Exactly. No, and actually one of the cool things I was when I was talking with some other people here on the Java platform team is that when you consider like the work they're doing, like the amount of code and stuff that's all running on Java, and then the businesses that are dependent upon that. Like it's many trillions of dollars. Yeah. It's far more than like any single country, or maybe at least close to in an area of at least like the U.S. GDP, which is just kind of wow when you think about it.
Crazy.
That's insane. How much is actually happening?
How much value is generated? So I'm just it's so good. It's so good. I'm just so happy birthday. Here's to another 260. Forget about 26. Long live Java and long live. This little digression that is GraalVM, this wonderful, beautiful thing that is GraalVM, because that's changed our ecosystem. And so GraalVM, so back to that. About GraalVM is this incredible set of extensions, I think, to like an open JDK distribution. And it has this thing called the native image builder. And for those of you who don't know, the native image builder does static analysis on your code, and it throws away. It just chucks out everything it can't be sure is going to be used at runtime. And so it does static analysis. Well, of course, that static analysis forecloses upon some of the very dynamic things that GraalVM, Java rather can do. So Java is a very dynamic language. It's not C++. It's not actually possible through sheer only static analysis to be sure of every little thing that it's going to do, because there's some things you can do at runtime in Java that are just perfectly fine that GraalVM just doesn't understand or is able to see. So for example, on the JVM, I can, through something like CJlib or ByteBuddy, I can create a brand new class with strings, right, at runtime after the application is started up. I can then register that class in the class loader. I can then, in another thread, perhaps, from the same class loader, use another string to reflectively create an instance of that class. And then if I wanted to, I could actually use an invocation handler to create a proxy for that type as well. And I could do all that without actually having a solid type at compile time, right? And if I wanted to, I could then serialize that proxy of that interface that I generated all from dynamic behavior. I could then serialize that into bytes. And maybe if I wanted to take those bytes and do some sort of arrangement with them, or call out into something that does something in a very efficient way. I could use JNI and pass those bytes to JNI. And all of that, GraalVM can't see. All those dynamic behaviors, it doesn't see at static analysis time. And so as a result, GraalVM is what we in the highfalutin framework business call a party pooper. It is really, really, really powerful. But you got to like give it some help. You've got to give it some extra configuration to make it understand what it's missing, because that's so much of the Java ecosystem that relies on these interesting little features and capabilities of the JVM, things that separate the JVM from the likes of C++ and C and so on, right? And actually, it's one of the reasons that Java, for a lot of people like me who came from other systems programming languages, seem to straddle that great divide between systems programming languages and scripting languages. Whereas I could do, you can't quite do eval, in Java, but pretty darn close. What I just described to you is actually kind of like that, right? You can actually synthesize code at runtime by giving it strings. And so, that's amazing. Like, you just try doing that in C++. It would be a very long journey. It's not a thing. There's no runtime reflection in C++ without a priori sort of knowledge. There's, none of that. It's just not possible. So, or if it is, it's it's not actually, ad hoc. It's there's some sort of thing done ahead of time. So I'm just very impressed with Java, and obviously frameworks like Hibernate and Spring and all these other ones by default take advantage of a lot of these dynamic behaviors. And so the trick is you got to give GraalVM configuration hints. You got to give it clues as to what it's doing, right? And as to what's going to be done in the application, so that when it throws away stuff, it knows not to throw away the stuff that you're mentioning in that config. Right? So that way at runtime, when the application tries to do reflection or a proxy or whatever, GraalVM doesn't barf and go, there's no such thing as this, how dare you ask, right? It actually can work. And so Spring Native is a framework that builds on top of that model. It provides dynamically the hints required to support a particular Spring Boot application. Okay, so you can build an application. Let's just build a reactive, hello world. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to use the Spring Native experimental support. I'll use the reactive web support, and I'll hit generate. And here, by the way, I'm using Spring Boot 2.50, which just came out not yesterday, but a week before. Yeah. Spring Boot 2.0 has a lot of neat features, not the least of which are dependency upgrades and improvements to the core framework. But one of the things I really quite like is they've sanitized sort of data source initialization for reactive apps versus non-reactive apps, etc. Okay, nice. So hello. Okay, where's my? There you go. Hello world. Hello cookie. Wait, what? What is this? It's a hello cookie. I gotta bookmark that. I wish I could bookmark it. What is this for? Okay, whatever.
This is your computer.
Well, it's on the JDK. It's in the JDK. It's a sun.security.ssl. I'm so excited. I have no idea what that is.
Hello cookie. Nice. That is something new.
Yeah. Okay. So public static void main, right? And again, not a big deal. I'm not actually here to focus too much on the Spring bit. Let's just create an HTTP endpoint. Okay. Whoa. Not get, and it's hello, right? Just hello world. Okay.
Nice.
Map.of message. Hello. No, happy 26th birthday, Java. Okay. So I've got myself just a very plain little endpoint here.
Okay.
Let's just make sure it works though. R. Good. Okay. So let's just run that and see what we get. Localhost. Hello. Okay, so clearly that's working. What I want? Yes.
We got hello world.
We're done.
Shut it down.
Call it. We did it. No, the system works, right? This is the important bit. But okay, so we've got this. What I want to do is I want to convert that into a native image application. There are two ways to go about this. One is to use the native image Maven plugin from GraalVM and so on, and that's certainly one option, and that's well documented. But we, by default, take a different tack. We use something called a build pack. And so build packs are a mechanism, a technique, a technology that originated at Heroku that the Spring team and Cloud Foundry team at Pivotal then enhanced, embraced, whatever. Working sometimes in tandem with Heroku, and eventually the two of us converged and we put together this new thing called build packs, and I think it's like build packs 3.0 or cloud native build packs, and that's what we joined. That's what we donated to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. There's an implementation of that called Paketo, and you can use Paketo if you like. It's just a command line, and the core conceit of build packs is given an artifact, be it a .jar or .war or .exe or Ruby on Rails app or a Go app or a Vue.js or React or whatever application, containerize it, right? And don't freak out. There's no YAML involved. There's no Docker files, right? These are the YAML is the reason. YAML is one of the reasons I think people leave IT. I'm not a big fan. I'm trying to avoid it whenever I can. Yeah, we've got this core thing, and given the pack CLI, you can say pack space build space, and then the directory, and then it'll actually containerize the artifact. It does some analysis on the code base, and it says, okay, look, this is a .jar. It's a standalone public static void main .jar, and so I'm just going to use Java -jar. What do I need to do that? Well, I need a JRE. Or this is a .NET EXE, right? I'll need the .NET CLR. Or maybe it's a PHP application, and I'll deploy it to Nginx or whatever. I don't even know what it does in the PHP one because, yeah. But I can also use Nginx, right? And Nginx will, if I give it a static, Node.js compiled client-side application for deployment, it'll deploy Nginx and set up a doc root and expose the JavaScript code from there, right? It'll do the normal things you'd expect it to do, because after all, there are only so many different ways to do that, right? Yeah, it's not like we've got 1,000 different ways to deploy a Java app. By the by, for those of you wondering, it'll also do the right thing for .war applications if you have anybody still doing those, right? So it'll download Apache Tomcat and then chuck the .war into Tomcat and then start up the Tomcat. But the point is, the build pack creates a file system that has everything required to run this application, which is neat because I don't want to do it and I don't need to do it. And it's a recipe that somebody else has already just figured out, right? And in particular, the Java support here is it owes to the basic Java build pack that Heroku created years ago, that the Spring team, having a lot more experience in that one particular vein, then enhanced, and then it's now what sort of resides today in the resulting product. So the Java build pack it's neat. And if you just had a stock standard Spring Boot app and you didn't do anything with Spring Native, you'd get something like that for your default configuration, right? And you wouldn't have this either, right? So you'd have just this Maven plugin, and this would be enough. This would already containerize your JVM application. It would create a Java runtime, and download the Java runtime and install that, and so on. So you have something useful there, and you'd get a Docker image. You could then deploy that. But what about GraalVM, right? I want to do native code, and so what this will do is, if you choose Spring Native at the start.spring.io Spring Initializer, it'll configure Spring Native. It'll add the Spring Native dependency here. Mm-hmm. It'll add the support for tiny images with build packs. It'll add the Spring AOT Maven plugin. And the Spring AOT Maven plugin is basically a broker, a clearinghouse for any transformations that we need to do on the code before we then hand it over to GraalVM. And so whether that's generating the Java equivalent of the Spring.NET Factories service loaders, or even possibly turning, there's other things we can do there, right? And some of which we've talked about before, but basically this is just the beginning. What we're doing right now is just preliminary. And so while the results are already promising, I can't wait for this big stuff to come, right?
Nice.
So we've got the Spring AOT Maven plugin. We can actually test that out in isolation. And again, I stress, this Spring Native stuff is experimental. Look at that, it's experimental. So the goal here, I want to just be super clear so we're not like confused about it. The goal here is to, I think, get Spring Native to a point where it's usable, and then hopefully maybe one day, I don't know. Actually, I have no idea. I'm speculating at this point, but I hope at some point that they would release that as a separate GA stable thing. But either way, what's definitely been talked about and what we're hoping to do is to turn, is to sort of have all that land in Spring Framework itself, Spring Framework 6, and then Spring Boot 3.0. So that's the next generation. That's next year, I think, roughly.
Okay. So what are some of the things you were just kind of mentioning you're going to be hoping to be coming with the Spring AOT Maven plugin? Like what's it doing now? Like what's maybe like one of the two or three big features you think that are going to be kind of coming, hopefully in this not too distant future?
We're hoping that you can actually translate your auto configuration, your Java configuration classes, which are classes of this form, right? Class my config. You can translate, let's say you have a class foo, whatever, right? Foo. So this is Java configuration, right? And the way it works is that when Spring starts up, it finds configuration classes, which, by the way, includes this Spring Boot application is transitively or indirectly annotated with that configuration. It finds the factory methods in this class, and then it returns the value. It invokes this method and returns the value for you. So we have another mechanism in Spring where you can actually functionally initialize the application context. So let me see if I can remember how to do this for Java. I do it a fair bit for Kotlin, but not for Java anymore. So Spring application builder dot main hello world application dot class, and then run, passing in the args. And then do I get to provide any initializers here? No, maybe it's up here. Yeah, a new application context initializer. And then you're given a pointer to the context, and then context dot register. No, maybe it's a generic application context, something like this. There you go, register bean. And
Okay.
here I want to do foo.class, and I provide a new not class, whatever that is. Okay, new foo. Okay. And so you can do this. This is already supported today.
Mhm.
You know, do that. And you know, it's faster, right? It's just because there's no reflection, there's nothing like that at all. But I think we can agree that's not exactly, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, right? It's totally different. There's a lot of code written in the old style. And so more to the point, we'd like to automate that. And things get weird, by the way, when you do like dependency injections. So let's suppose you go down here, class bar, right? And let's suppose that foo has a dependency on bar. So private final bar, this dot bar equals B. So there you go, foo, bar, whatever. This needs, in order to build this, I need to create a new foo, but it depends on bar, so I need a pointer to bar. So bar equals context dot get bean bar dot class, that kind of thing. And so, you know, it's just, it's not the kind of code you'd think of when you write normal configuration, right? But it looks like that. And so wouldn't it be nice if we could automatically turn this auto config, this Java configuration, into this functional config? And yeah, that'll be, I think that'll be neat. I can't wait to see if that works or not. I don't know if they're going to do it. I have no idea, but my hope is that something like that will happen, you know?
Nice. Yeah, that would be pretty awesome and pretty awesome. Just, you know, something that Pratik and I were talking about during ours, how the constant improvements being made to the JVM to where it just upgrading to more recent versions of Java, you'll see performance improvements. Doing absolutely nothing to your code, you'll get performance improvements. And, you know, here you can also see, even with frameworks higher up the stack, you know, with Spring, how, you know, getting onto some of the more recent stuff, you know, maybe eventually if this actually does pan out, you'll see, you know, a real improvement in your performance of Spring just from upgrading it without really having to make any changes to your code, or maybe it could be some light changes in some areas. So that's really cool to hear.
Great, and I think so too. And like I said, our goal with Spring Native is that you can bring your app unchanged. So we'll talk about that. There's actually some interesting stuff in the just released. Well, it's not even released yet, I guess. It's just, you can get the snapshots, but it's 0.10. What am I doing? Is that right? 0.10 snapshot. Yeah, 0.10 snapshot. So that's actually what you get on the initializer as well.
Nice.
We'll talk about that as well. But we want that to be the case. We want the goal with Spring Native is that you can bring your application unchanged and have it work. And that's a big deal because we can't afford to pull the rug out from all the apps that have ever been written and say, hey, do this. We're not just, this isn't like Spring minus all the things you've come to expect to work, right? We have to make it work so that large swaths of applications actually work, right? We can't start fresh and then, you know, come to you with a much more limited programming model to make it work. And so we don't want to either. We're trying to make it so that you can take your traditional servlet and Hibernate and JPA and, you know, whatever application, and that just works, right? I spend all my time in Happy Path land over in the reactive world. You know, I love reactive. I love to me, it just seems to make a lot more sense to build software in 2021 with reactive. But that's just, you know, that's just that. It's the tip of the spear stuff. It's not the everyday sort of market segment, right? So we want people that have already written apps yesteryear to be able to continue to run those and to benefit from Spring Native. And so it's a bit of a bigger slog for us. It's also part of it is not really limited to Spring so much as it is we just need to bring everything that we purport to integrate and support with us, right? And so a lot of that is doing the engineering work to make sure that our satellite dependencies, these third parties with which we work, all do the right thing.
Yeah, no, that's one of the difficult things is that, you know, it's great, you know, whether it's Java or, of course, in Spring, that you have so many people using it. But then kind of with that, now you have like all this stuff you have to have like for the backwards compatibility, because it's not going to be like, hey, this is really cool, but you're going to completely rewrite your code. And people will be like, thanks, but I'm not going to, you know, drop, you know, 30,000, you know, like 2,000 engineering hours just to rewrite it.
No, thanks. Exactly. We want this to be good for everybody, and we're getting there. Okay, we're making huge strides. I just did this while you were talking because I just realized I should have kicked this off minutes ago. I did Maven clean package Spring Boot build image. So I showed you earlier that you can use Paketo to containerize your application, and you could just point Paketo to a .jar, and that would turn into a Docker image. But Spring Boot has that built in to the Maven plugin, right, into the plugin. So you can just say Spring Boot build image, right, and there's an equivalent for Gradle, and that'll do it, right? That'll actually kick off the process. But remember, it's going to compile, and it's going to download GraalVM in the container, and then do the compilation in the container, and then produce a Docker image that we can then Docker tag and then Docker publish. All of that happens in the container. So even though I'm running on a Mac, the resulting container will be a Linux container that has a Linux binary inside of it, right? And that's going to take a while. And the reason it takes a while is because GraalVM isn't just compiling this, right? It's not compiling my, 20 odd lines of Java code here. It's actually compiling this and every .class file that's ever existed on my class path, right?
Yeah. No. So I hadn't really worked too much with native image until I tried working with Spring Boot or the Spring Native image, and but then like I was trying to build it and like it kept like airing out, complaining. I'm like, oh my god! Like I kind of heard some people talk about the memory requirements, and I'm like, oh man, like it does need like 20 gigs of memory to do all this work, and like my laptop feels like it's about to take off, and
I thought it was like Slack. I was like, no, I'm not even running Slack. What's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, it's this. So I just ratcheted this up. I don't think you need this much. I think you can get away with like 10 gigs, but I put it way on the other side. I've got one of those laptops with 64 gigs of RAM, so I can run Slack and Chrome. But now
exactly,
those are my resources on my Docker daemon. It's beefy. It takes a minute. You can't really, maybe you can. If I were to just shut up for a minute, you could hear my laptop fan revolting.
It's pretty shocking. I just didn't. I was still kind of surprised, even though I kind of heard the stories, I heard the rumors of it, but I was just like, oh wow, it really is no joke. Because especially I thought like, oh okay, that would make sense for like some sort of like, okay, it has hybrid, whatever, it has like a bunch of things in there, and it's like a real sort of a real application. I'm like, this is a matter for Hello World, but
right, yeah, it's not Hello World. It's all the class path, right? Mm-hmm. It's everything. And I kind of wonder if one day we'll ever get like. Maybe it already exists in GraalVM Enterprise. I don't know. I have no idea. But wouldn't it be nice if there was some way to cache the pre-computed, pre-built binary form of these .jars as not just .classes, but like native code? Yeah. So that way, if I used this library from, let's say, Log4j, right?
Yeah.
Why does GraalVM need to recompile all the .classes in Log4j and do all that analysis? But then how would it know what the footprint for the user is? I don't know. Maybe it'll never come. Like maybe the user only uses 2 classes, not all the classes in Log4j. So maybe that doesn't make sense. Okay, so there we go. There's our image. So
do you have one that M1 Max is that way is so quick?
No, this is not my M1. The build pack stuff isn't great on M1 yet. So I don't maybe it's better now, but it wasn't when I got it months ago. So this is all Intel x86, stock standard stuff. Okay, so this starts up in about 54 milliseconds, but keep in mind I'm streaming, so I'm pegging my CPU with the camera and all that. So 54 milliseconds, which is not bad, right? And now if I go to localhost, hello, there we go. Okay, so that's neat, right? It's up and running super fast. It's fine. Now, what I care about is the footprint. This will take tens of megabytes of RAM, not hundreds, or more. So that's really amazing. But we have only just begun because, of course, there are going to be times when what we've just done won't work. And now I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how much time do we have? 20 more minutes. Let's talk about what Spring Native is doing behind the scenes. Spring Native.
We're also pretty flexible there as well. So if you need some extra time, by all means, you can go a little bit longer.
Please. Spring Native, it provides those hints. I told you about those hints, those configuration files that you can provide to GraalVM to tell it about certain things that you're doing that it may not have otherwise kind of caught into or picked up on. So things like JNI, reflection, serialization, proxies. And by the way, that's important. JDK proxies only. The config files only support invocation handler interface style JDK proxies, right? So all those things you need to tell it about in these config files. So Spring Native does that, and it provides a programming model. So what I'm going to do is Spring Native, and I'm going to bring in the Spring AOT dependency here. Okay, I think that's it. And let's do Maven tests true clean package. By the way, that was a Docker image. I just ran the Docker image, but anybody should know you can just Docker tag this and then Docker push it to your Docker Hub or Google Container Registry, or VMware has a VMware Harbor, or I'm sure Oracle has something you could use, whatever. Lots of good things you can use to publish your image there, and then you can include that in your Kubernetes deployment, and you're off to the races, right? Okay, so now I'm rebuilding this just to make sure I have the dependencies that I need. Did that work? It seems like it worked. Let's try. So do I have class X native configuration? Maven, reload. There you go. Okay, looks like it's working. So, okay, so what happens is when Spring Native runs, it generates configuration for you. And I'll go to the Spring Native project itself. So Spring Project Experimental, Spring Native. And then it has these hints. So let's see, hints, quartz hints, okay. Okay, so these are hints that you can register programmatically. And so there's a couple ways you can register hints programmatically using our component model. You can use resource hints. So if you load a resource from a jar somewhere, GraalVM needs to know about it. You can write that JSON file yourself, or you can use command line switches for the GraalVM compiler. But we provide a programming model and GraalVM also provides a lower programming model. We provide a programming model that we can use to automatically, with annotations and so on, describe these things, and we can, they can be co-located with the actual code that you're trying to ship. So this, for example, would be some hints that apply to the Quartz scheduling engine in Spring Framework, right? The support for that in Spring Framework. So one hint that I had to provide when I wrote this hint class is that something in the JDK, something in the code might try and load any of these files, table_wildcard.sql, right? So that could happen. So I told it to not throw those away. Similarly, these types might be serialized, right, for the persistence of the actual types in the Quartz job description. So that it might be turned into a blob of bytes that gets chucked into a SQL data store for you. So I had to register a serialization hint. We can register something called a type hint, right? And by the way, there's an umbrella annotation here called native hint. So if you want to co-locate a bunch of related things into one annotation, you can put it in a native hint. So in theory, I could have also put the serialization hint inside this native hint, or they can be top level. It doesn't really matter, right? So here I'm saying this native hint has one or more type hints. And what I'm saying is that for this class called copyArrayList.class, I want to allow writes, I want to allow unsafe access for the field called lock. And I want to allow all sorts of reflective access to that field, right? So these annotations correspond more or less to the types that you would see in the JSON config. Similarly, we have other type hints for hash map, for the dirty flag map.class, all these sort of things. And you can do that in your own code, right? If you want to, you don't even have to add what I just added. You can, if you just leave the stock standard start.spring.io initialized code, and you've got something that you're doing. Let's say I go here and I create a bean application runner. Okay, return application runner. If I wanted to add that, if I wanted to do something in there, let's say I wanted to create a proxy, or what's something I can do quickly? Let's say I have class cat, okay, and I'm going to have a method here, void meow, okay, whatever, okay, very trivial. Cat, new cat. I could do that, and as soon as I've typed this will work. It'll actually, I don't need to do anything special. But let's say I wanted to do everything the hard way. I wanted to do, com.example.helloworld.cat var class name equals that. And then I wanted to do class.forName, class name, or no, sorry, yeah. I want to do a new instance, right? So actually, no, that's right. I want to do class.forName this. Yeah, I want to do class name. Okay, and then that gives me what? That gives me bar class for this. And then I wanted to get the class, new instance. So what's the constructors, I think? Right, get constructors, pick the first one, and then I'll take a new instance, and there's nothing I want to put into it. So new cat equals cat, right? So I'm doing everything the hard way here. If I ran this code right now, sorry?
Yeah. No, that's an exceptionally hard. I never thought about doing the things this way, but yes.
Right. But the point is,
good reason.
If you did anything like that, this type, because it's not being used directly, well, it is here, I guess. So
yeah.
There you go. But because it's not being used directly, see this? The IDE is saying it's gray, it's never used. I'm pretty sure that GraalVM would also think it's not being used and it would throw it away, right?
Okay.
And so in order to make sure that it doesn't get thrown away, you can register a hint, right? And again, you don't need to do this for Spring Beans. Anything annotated with that component or that bean or anything like that will be just automatically registered. I want to create a type hint, or I can either use a string or I can use the actual class literal. So type, and here I'll use cat.class. Okay, so that type hint tells Spring Native to create the configuration hint to keep this cat class in the resulting build, right? That gets fed into GraalVM. So now this code would not fail. Let's see, new cat dot to string, and then let's just override this so we have something to look at. No, just geez. Okay. Okay, so there's my reflective access. If I wanted to do proxies, right, you could register a proxy hint. So here I could say I want to proxy a particular type. So again, you might need to do this even if you're doing type hints. That's not the same as doing proxies for that hint. So you might need to do both. You might need to do both reflective and proxy hints.
Okay.
So in this case, I'm doing types cat.class. And again, hopefully you'll never need to do either of these. Hopefully we've just caught every single corner case where these are going to become useful when you have to use these hints yourself is anytime you're doing something with a third-party library that we haven't already sort of provided hints for. So you can see here, we've already provided all the hints for courts, or at least we hope we have, right? Like if we missed a corner case, please pull request welcome or at least file a bug or something. But then even here, these hints are all sort of fixed. They're one-time things. And the reason that this is slightly better than the JSON because now it's a Java code and it lives next to my Java code, right? It lives co-located with my Java code. But sometimes you might want to do things that are more programmatic. And so here, if you want, you can implement something called native configuration. And that's what that second dependency I showed you was, this Spring AOT. If you want to actually provide your own native configuration, you need to actually bring in that library, and then you can have access to these types, right? To this native configuration callback. And what that does is it gives you a type system, and you can use the type system to say, hey, find the class that lives in org/course/job, right? And if that class is not null, then find all the subtypes of it. In this case, I'm finding all beans, all classes that implement job, basically, or that extend from job. Okay. And then I'm programmatically looping through each one of those and adding a hint declaration. And this hint declaration is I'm adding a type to this hint declaration. I'm saying this type is job subtype.get.name, and I want full access for that type. And I'm returning that list of hint declarations to Spring Native, which will then contribute all those programmatically. It'll turn out into configuration that gets fed into GraalVM. And we do this all over the place, right? This is a simple example. But for example, when you use a Spring Data repository.
Now, is there any sort of tuning you would ever want to do with, like, so you said you kind of naturally do this all over the place. Now, is there any for build time or runtime considerations where you may want to tune some of this, or does it not really matter?
Well, I mean, for example, I'm not registering in this code. We only register the subclasses of job, which if there are none, then it won't get registered, right? Okay. And we check to see that type itself actually exists, and if it doesn't exist, then we don't even bother. So, these things are narrowly scoped, hopefully. Right?
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, GraalVM, again, it's going to throw everything out by default. So all we're trying to do really with Spring Native is add some stuff back in. We're trying to keep it from, reaping some things that we need.
Okay.
Let's talk about proxies though. Okay, so proxies are, I think, pretty interesting. How do you do that in Java, basically? Java invocation, handler, proxies. Okay, so yeah, Java lang reflect proxy. Okay. And how does that work? I haven't even done this. So what I would normally do in framework level kind of code is I would use something called the proxy factory bean, and that hides a lot of this tedium for me. But what you would do in Java dot new proxy instance. So you get the current class loader, and then you can say, I'm going to give it an interface. So interface animal void talk. Okay, oops. Implements animal. Okay, so I've got this. Come on. Don't need that anymore. Yeah. Okay, so I've got this concrete type, but let's not focus on that. Let's say I want to create an instance entirely from an interface, so I can give it a pointer to now the animal. So new class animal.class, and then I give it an invocation handler, and here you get a callback. Right, so Java is giving you a chance to var proxy equals. It's giving you a chance to, when this object gets invoked with this method and these arguments, you can determine what happens. So I'm going to return null because it's void, but I'm going to print out moo. Right, I'm going to create my own animal there.
Okay.
I'm creating a proxy object there. This is this is like Java Lang 1.4, I think, something like that. Let me just. I'm just not happy with this. Okay. Go computer, go. Good. Okay, so there you go. I'm creating a simple proxy. RCL. Okay. Okay, so I can actually inspect the method that's being invoked. I can say, give me the name of the method, and I can print that out as well, method, and so on. And you can actually determine if method dot get name dot equals talk. Sorry, if it doesn't, then of course just return, right? I don't care. I'll just return null. Or better yet, I wonder if you can just do this. I think you can just actually invoke it against the original. So proxy 1, and then provide any args. But of course that would fail because there's no underlying object. So I'm not actually sure what you're supposed to do here. I know what you're supposed to do in the Spring world, but let's say if it's just that, then I'll just return null. That's probably not going to work for things like public boolean equals and all that stuff. But for whatever, it'll work fine for now. So now I got a proxy, and I'm going to cast it var animal proxy equals animal proxy, and I want to say animal proxy dot talk, and that'll actually, let's see what this. Let's just hope that works on the JVM first.
Let's see what happens.
There you go. So moo, method talk moo, right? So I created an object from whole cloth, basically. I went in there with a dream and an interface, and I got a resulting actual object. Well, of course, don't do this with GraalVM unless you're willing to provide a proxy hint, right? So here I'm saying proxy hint animal.class, right? That kind of thing. You need to actually tell it about that. And so again, hopefully we've already done all that for you, and you don't need to worry about it. But these types exist so that in the corner cases where things aren't working the way you expect, you can register your own. Now, where things get really interesting is
real quick, just so people know, what does it look like when that kind of error happens? Just so people know what to look for. Maybe
you want to see. We can actually try. I got rid of all that code though. Sad. We'll actually tell. I'm not sure if it's Spring Native that tells you or if it's GraalVM, but either way, you get a very helpful message saying, "Hey, you tried to use this proxy. You consider adding a hint for these types." So I'm going to comment out these proxy hints and these type hints. Okay, and then that's going to run when the application starts up.
Okay, so that's good to see though that sounds like it gives pretty helpful errors. It's not like a very vague.
No,
you
yeah.
know, you got error code 100, and it's like, oh wait, what happened?
No, yeah, it's way more helpful than it has any business being. It's very, very useful. So Maven, this will take a minute. Boot build -image. Let me comment out the web stuff just to reduce the compile time even further so we can get through this quicker.
Okay.
Because I want to show you a slightly more involved case. Okay. So I need to have a starter for Spring Boot itself. Okay. So now it's just a basic Spring Boot app with nothing in it except for the core Spring Boot types. Whoops. Static. Oh, yeah, of course, it's not happy with me on that. Okay. So now, okay, what's it doing? So that's going to run, and let's see what that does. It should fail, right? I mean,
Yeah.
oh, I'm typing. Oh, see, that's the problem. Well, actually, that's probably not an issue. It's the proxy, so we might not be able to see that error until runtime. Although, you know,
Okay.
who knows? We'll probably see. So let's let it run. Give it a second.
Yeah, I guess that's the one. Now it does take like a few minutes now for it to build. It's not like the
Oh yeah.
10 seconds later.
It's getting better. Don't get me wrong, but I like I said, there's some obvious reasons why it's slower than a regular Java compilation.
Yeah, no, it's understandable. It is kind of funny though that I do remember, again, back when I way first started, and some of the first applications I was working on were these giant monoliths, and like it would take like maybe 15 minutes to build or something like that. Like it was a commitment, and like yeah, so like by comparison, like 3 minutes is actually nothing, even if it does kind of take you out of that mental state still.
Well, I mean, you remember the old XKCD cartoon about why are you slacking off, and it's just waiting for the code
compiling.
To compile. Yeah. We're back. That's where we are again.
Yeah, I think I had that posted in my cubicle.
Okay, so come on, let's go. Wait, because I'm waiting for this to finish. I want to show you one more little trick here.
Cool.
But come on, you can do it.
It always runs slower when other people are watching.
By definition.
Yeah.
Schrodinger's demo. Did you get any burnt ends, or are you just sitting there by yourself with no burnt ends?
Unfortunately, no burnt ends. Maybe some bratwurst tonight. So Bree, my fiance, for everyone else watching, she's over at some friends doing a barbecue, and she promised to bring me back some bratwurst. So we'll see what happens for dinner.
Hey, that worked. Why did that work?
Oh, that's the worst.
Well, okay. I'm just trying to figure out why.
Yeah.
Animal.class. It does. Graalvm is surprisingly smart. Like if you give it like that class.forename thing I showed you earlier.
Yeah.
I think it actually looks for that particular one case of like class.forename a string literal, right? So if I do, and even the IDE in this case knew that I'm looking for a class. But like for example, if I did var a equals com.example, and then var b equals whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it would be smart enough to know about that, right? For example, you can get into some corners where it's doing some very obvious, very cool little tricks to make a lot of cases just work. But
that's good to see. That's good to see that it's able to be pretty smart and intuitive. That you don't necessarily have to use those maybe too often, but it's good to know that they're there when that does happen. So
what happens if I do that? What if I plug in these two and then plug in a class reference to this interface that's derived that way? So that now there's no explicit use of, let's see, proxy dot get class dot get method talk dot invoke proxy and nothing. Okay, so that should work, maybe, kind of. Let's run this and see if that still works.
Man, this is definitely getting into some of the real edge pushing its old brakes.
Hello, common example, hello world cat. Not cat,
Oh, that, yeah, you need the animal, yeah.
Make it logically sound, even though it's a contorted thing. Okay, good. So that's working again. Let's see if it breaks in GraalVM. Being better every day, so it wouldn't surprise me if this worked, but
Yeah.
it hasn't before. It has failed to work before, these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm going to run that again. And this isn't even like Spring related. I just want to show you this stuff because I'm just endlessly fascinated.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm working on right now is a little series. So, you never typically think of Java as a language you can do scripting in, and just because there is a bit of startup time, there is somewhat of a memory issue, or it's more resource heavy than some other scripting languages. But because of things like some of the new language enhancements, that's kind of reducing some of the formality, and now things just like native image, it is becoming a practical option. So I'm actually been putting together a little article series on how you can actually use Java as a scripting language to do stuff in. And I think that's interesting just because for me, whenever, I always have to Google every time I have to do any kind of thing with bash scripting, just because this makes no sense to me once I get in there. So it's definitely one of those things that actually I do need to have to automate this little thing. Java is actually becoming a pretty practical option for being able to do that now. So that's pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, and it's you can now just run a Java class file. There's actually
Yep.
What is it, JBean or something like that, or whatever. There's a
JBang.
JBang, is that it?
Yep.
Yeah, where you can actually turn a Java program into a script. So user bin env JBang, whatever, just like you would for Python or Ruby or whatever. And even other languages like Scala and Groovy and Kotlin have all supported scripting modalities for a long time. So it's not like it's impossible. It's just not been a priority. But now that it's becoming more and more of one, I'm just always impressed by what's happening. And I got a Spring Boot app to work in just a little, you can do Java and then point it to a Java class file, right? To a Java, you can say Java space hello.java as opposed to hello.class, and it'll actually run the code in that source file as though it was a script. Okay, so it ran again. Let's see what happens. Okay. Native reflection configuration for common example animal is missing. I'm not even sure. Is that the error for the proxy or for the reflection? Because I did both. I think the proxy actually worked, which is cool, right? Native configuration for class access reflectively is missing. Either way, you get the point, right? You get these nice errors. Where does that error come from? Actually, this looks like the Spring Analyzer, but I'm not sure. It might be.
But that's good. It's again, kind of like to what I was touching on and what you're saying is that it's not like these very vague, weird errors where it's what's going on, or somewhat the infamous class def found, where so many people get that so confused and think that the class isn't found when it's actually like the construct. So that's good to see that it's actually very specific errors, so it can be pretty easy to know, okay, this is the kind of hint and stuff I need to do to fix it. It's not throw annotations at it until it runs.
Right. So can I show you one last thing here?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're at the top of the hour, but yeah, you can definitely, we're pretty easy on time. So
okay, I could stay here all day and talk about this stuff. This is
I know.
so much fun. Okay, so Pratik was talking about one of the subjects that's near and dear to my heart, which is writing Kubernetes controllers with Spring, right? And so there is this project I put together. So no, let me try that again. The good Dr. Dave Sire, who's a legend, he put together a sample Spring-based controller, but he hand-rolled all the JSON configuration for the official Kubernetes Java client. So the Kubernetes Java client comes from the Kubernetes GitHub org. It's the actual official Java client for Kubernetes. And it, in turn, as I understand it, is code generated from all the is it gRPC? I don't even know. It's the bindings, Swagger. Yeah, so it's the open API Swagger annotations. So it's code generated from that, right? So this code, in turn, he wrote a bunch of JSON config for GraalVM to make a simple controller work. And I thought that was endlessly interesting, right? Because why wouldn't you want to do that, right? So, but I turned it into some Spring native hints. And so this project, it's available under GitHub. Spring One. We did a Spring One tour event in May. That's this month for those of you keeping track. And I put these hints in the Spring native Kubernetes repo here. So, and those in turn get published to my Artifactory instance. But you can just clone this and Maven Clean install it. That'll install these hints for you, right? So it's you can see I'm actually doing some static type hints like before, the annotations, but I'm also programmatically registering all the types that have these annotations on them, API model and JSON adapter. So I don't have to, because there's literally like 1,000 of these classes in the official Kubernetes Java client. Yeah. So I'm programmatically adding those annotations, those hints, and I'm enabling these options that you're going to need when you compile. And I am enabling, what else am I doing? Anything with this, and basically I'm just programmatically registering everything you would need to be able to use the Kubernetes Java client. At least I think everything, hopefully. So far it seems fine. Once that's installed, you can then use that in your application above and beyond Spring Native. So this is how you create your own hints. They don't have to live in the Spring Native project.
Nice.
Right? So now you can go here. We actually this is, and you can watch, by the way, folks, you can watch the Buternetes, Spring One Tour May edition, right? That video is on our spring.io video channel. So spring.io goes to our spring.io/video goes to our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is just chock full of good stuff. And the last Spring One Tour was like every Spring One Tour we do like a 90-minute to a 2-hour long video featuring multiple speakers, right? So each segment's like 10 to 15 minutes, and each speaker adds more to the theory, to the demo, to the discussion. And one of the segments was how to write a Kubernetes controller. And there's a bunch of other stuff related to Kubernetes and Spring, but one of them was how to write a Kubernetes controller. And so here, here's the official Java, the client Java Spring integration. So the official Kubernetes project has Spring support, right? Out of the box, so you don't have to do anything special there. And then we're using Spring Native, so you can see we've got the build pack there. And then finally, for the AOT Maven plugin, remember I told you this is a clearinghouse for all custom hints. If you want these custom Spring Native Kubernetes hints that I just showed you to work, you have to add those as dependencies to the AOT Maven plugin, right? So I'm adding a dependency to the plugin, not to the general class path. With that done, everything else is pretty much as it would have been otherwise. And then you can see Kubernetes controller. Here's the basic, it's a shared index informer. Mm-hmm. These are basic Kubernetes types. Basically, it's just a discussion of how to do something that prints out all the pods using the Java API. But this actually compiles into a Docker image, into a native image that runs inside of Docker. Nice. So yeah, like you can just check that out. It's so amazing what you can do now with this. Because you're right, like I want infrastructure that takes nothing in terms of footprint. I want it to be as small as possible. And so to your point, you just talked about how an exciting next frontier for Java is that you can do scripting languages. For me, the other next frontier that's really interesting is embedded. Like I can do small, 10 megabyte footprint applications that use Spring. I could do scripting applications that use Spring. I could do, darn near anything now.
Yeah.
I
didn't even kind of think about that with the embedded side of it, that's one major area, or kind of forgot about maybe that the embedded area is another area where adding the native image is going to make a big difference for Java. So
totally. And can you imagine what happens once Project Panama gets here? I wonder how that's going to all fold into GraalVM. But imagine being able to, with ease, invoke native libraries on the class path with the same sort of ease and impunity that you would invoke just another library on the class path jar. And imagine with GraalVM, you can actually compile your native code into a library. So if you've got Spring-based business logic for security or for authentication or whatever, you can actually compile that into a GraalVM library and then link that to your native code. So if you've got complex logic that you don't want to have to rewrite in C or something, but you need to do something in C, or on Android actually, or on iOS, you can link to native code in both of those. That native code could be a GraalVM library, a DLL or a .dylib or .so or whatever, right?
Nice. That's awesome.
Spring. Yeah. So I just hope people try it out. Don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Yeah.
Spring.io/video.
Yeah, I posted that into the comments as well, just for easy access. So
I just got to say, Billy, my friend from years and years who went to Oracle, I just want to say that this video, the subscriber list here, it's 156,000 followers. I wonder.
I know where this is going.
Do you?
I know this is going.
Do you? What's
yeah,
that
yeah.
What's
We're
that
working on it. We're working on it.
I'm just saying, people, there's good stuff here, friends. Good stuff. Don't believe me. Ask the internet.
Getting me that.
You're in a few of those talks. You're in a few of these videos somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think from like a few recordings from previous spring ones. No, one funny story when you mentioned Dr. Dave Sire's name that I'm just kind of remembering of. A few years ago, myself and then a mutual friend of ours, and now he's on the spring team at Tommy Ludwig. We were at Spring IO in Barcelona, and that's like the first time we met each other, and we were just kind of standing around talking kind of like after the conference was over. And, whatever, we're both smart enough guys, but like, whatever, we just type enough code until hopefully something actually starts working. And then it just kind of so happens that both Dave Sire and Dr. Dave Sire and Jürgen Holler kind of stand right next to us at our table. And we're just kind of like, what's happening? And like, they're talking and like, they're way up here and we're way down here. And like occasionally, like we're trying to just like interject with like, oh yeah, Java leg object. Yeah, that's a cool thing. And then they just kind of like look at us and go right back to like speaking almost comparative. No, I mean, they were very nice. I mean, it was just kind of funny. Like we're just desperately trying to find little ways to like drop into this conversation. Just to be like, yeah, we belong here.
Isn't that amazing? I have the same feeling of aloofness and like starstruck. I mean, I feel the same around them, of course, but also people on your team, like Brian Getz and so on. I also like, I should say something like, how about that local sports team? And then they just walk away. It's fine. But totally get you, buddy. Thanks for having me. I don't know.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, that great conversation. Learned again a bit more about Spring Native. Like I said, I just barely touched with it just a couple of times. But no, that was really cool to kind of see. And it's good to see that like when errors come up, like if for like it can't find a class, it gives like a pretty clear error of what's going on. And then it's a pretty, straightforward way on how to fix that error. So that's good to know. Cause like there's definitely like, I do also remember a complaint, particularly years back with Spring, that like people were just like throw annotations at it until it starts working and throw content or application context until it starts working. So it's one of those areas where that's been also vastly improved, that you get pretty straight errors as to what's really going on. So that helps a lot.
We try. That's the Spring Analyzer. No, is that right? Error Analyzer. The error analyzer mechanism in Spring Boot. So if an exception gets thrown, there are some well-known exceptions. We catch them and then we print out a pretty printed message. It bubbles up to the top of the framework, and the framework gives you a nice like cause, possible solution, kind of thing. Well, thanks for noticing. Thanks for having me. I'm sorry to whoever's next. I didn't mean to.
Oh no, that's all right. Actually, it's just me next. I'm gonna do a little bit of live coding, a little bit talking to kind of finish out my portion of the stream before I hand it off to Ted here. So should be a good time. But yeah, thanks again so much for joining me, and hopefully I'll actually see you in person here soon enough.
Sooner rather than later, buddy. Thanks again.
All right, man. See ya. Bye. All right. It is now just me. So actually one thing from conversations with Pratik and Josh that we were having is, let me go ahead and add this to the stream. So this is kind of like from like a old presentation I have done. But I think one thing as Java developers, or at least certainly I know, it's like if a long time ago, like if I was just like working on an application, like supposed to like these like big monolithic applications, and you asked me like, oh, like we had this idea because we're working all day on these applications that's like primarily the code that's actually running in production, but it really isn't. Like no matter how big your monolith is, and or maybe some of those libraries at your company that you may be using, it's really just going to be the very small, like the tip of the iceberg, or the tip of this triangle of the actual code that's running in production. Oops. Actually, that's a great book you should check out, Continuous Delivery, but that's not the point of this. And now, there we go. But really, the vast majority of the code that's actually running in production is all this underlying code. So like whether you're using a library like Spring or Quarkus, or, you know, and of course with all those libraries, they use other things like Jackson or Hibernate and JPA, and just all this underlying code. And then below that is like the JDK, and below that is like your operating system. All that is kind of happening here. And this is, you know, whenever hackers are looking to exploit your code, that's really where they're going after, like the infamous Equifax hack. You know, they were going after an exploit in an older version of Apache Struts, but then to like at least more of what Pratik and Josh and I were talking about with like performance is that like every new version the JDK that comes out, you know, with Hotspot, the JVM, you know, there's going to be a lot of performance enhancements in there that if you just go to the most recent version without making any changes to your code, not like you have to go and change everything to using records, though I recommend doing that, but, you know, you wouldn't have to maybe go and make a bunch of changes or change everything to using Lambdas. You would just get a lot of performance enhancements just from updating your code to running to the newest JDK. And despite some of the concerns when it comes to some of the newer JDK, like things being deprecated or things being removed, still the vast majority of your code should still be running without any changes from previous versions of Java. So that is definitely just something always to kind of keep in mind, that really the code that you're writing and that you're working on is only a very small fraction of the actual code running in production. And that's kind of why you always kind of want to be on the latest and greatest of underlying libraries or the JDK or whatever, or operating system, of course, and from on down, to make sure you're getting those security patches, the performance enhancements and feature enhancements to kind of keep you running secure, running fast, and then also kind of keeping everyone happy because they can take advantage of like all the new code features that are kind of coming out in the most recent versions of either Java or the underlying libraries of like Spring or whatever libraries you might be using. All right. So during this time, so about 45 minutes left, exactly 45 minutes left in my portion of the stream. So one thing I'm going to just try maybe working on for a little bit is the Spring Pet Clinic. And if you're not familiar with it, that's not what I wanted to do. The Spring Pet Clinic, the Spring Boot Pet Clinic, is a demo application the Spring team put together for kind of giving you a, you know, somewhat reasonably sized application to kind of work with to demonstrate Spring Boot that isn't just, you know, a pure hello world kind of demonstration application. There's actually some, you know, meat to it. But what I'm going to do, one thing I wanted to check out, just part of my own work, is to see what kind of performance it would look like to upgrade this to JDK 16 and also start to use things like records where possible. So I'm going to try working on this for a little bit. So like one of the first things I need to do though is, I believe, yes, so it's on Java 1.8. So let's go ahead and see if we can update that to Java 16. And the Spring Boot version update that to 2.5. Might as well, because that's the latest now. Whoop. If I can actually type correctly. Okay. Uh-oh. Bunch of errors are happening now. Did it just mess up from... Says it's building. Hopefully, I think it maybe just messed up because I goofed up the palm. Okay. Yeah, the Maven dependencies are coming back. All right, looks like errors are going away now. Is anyone else using JDK 16 in production? And or is anyone making use of any of some new features? Like I said, probably primarily you can be looking at records with this, like I said, in the little bit of time you may have. But there is so many other great and cool new features that have been also recently added in post Java 8 and post Java 11. Actually, just from a conversation I've been having with a colleague, I'm just gonna screen capture it a little bit. Sure, he won't mind because it's not any particularly private information, but yeah, so like, but yeah, records that was added in JDK 16. Pattern matching for instant of, another feature that was added in JDK 16. And both of those are really cool. So if you don't know what that is, I can kind of show you some of that code here as well on my GitHub. So like one really frustrating thing when using instance of before Java 17 in Java is you would always have like this really annoying pattern where you'd be like, okay, is this object here actually this kind of instance of an object that you're expecting it? And if it is, okay, then you have to assign and cast it to that value, and then you would do whatever you wanted to do with that value later on. And yeah, this, it's just 2-3 lines of code here that, there's opportunities for mistakes here. There is, and it's just frustrating to write. So something that was added in, let me make sure that was 16. That was added in 16 is this new pattern matching for instance of, where it's much easier. Oops, actually I updated that code since then. I didn't go back and fix it. Where you can do this pattern matching, where you say, test it out. Is it an instant of string? And if it is an instant of string, assign it to this variable. Now I am a string. And then as long as wherever this code is true, that I am a string, this will be, which is called flow scope. You can then directly reference that variable and then kind of do whatever work you want with it. But obviously this is, just that much more simpler. You're not having to do the test and then the assignment and then do whatever work you want with it. So, this is one of those nice new features that are added post Java, definitely post Java 8, but then also post Java 11. So just all the more reason to be on the latest version of Java. So back to the code changes. Let's see first that this all actually run. Ignore that. Okay. And there you go. So here, Pet Clinic runs. And of course, as you saw when just before I changed it, this code was built for Java 8, and without any modification, it runs for Java 16. Again, there is some meat to this, but it's not just purely Hello World. There is some meat to this, so that can give you some amount of confidence that you can actually upgrade to more recent versions of Java post 8 and post 9. There's been a lot of concerns with post 9 or Java 9 and later because of the addition of module system. But you can see we updated it without any changes. Oh, hey, Vince. So let's see about actually updating the records. So I've been talking about it a few times. Oops, jump 395. All right, is it gonna? There we go. Records. So, as I mentioned, this is probably one of the biggest changes that are coming to Java post 8, and just like a biggest addition since like Lambda and Streams that kind of brought functional programming to Java. This is like one of the biggest changes since then with the addition of records. So records, there's a lot of things that records kind of does. And so one of them is like right here, we have this class that it only has 2 fields to it, point, X and Y. But despite that, you then have to define like a bunch of other things to kind of give it equals, hash codes, toString, and it ends up quickly being just dozens of lines just for this really simple data carrier. So now with record, you can just do record, point, int, and X, or int X and int Y to define this data carrier for point instead of having to do all that. And the way this works is record, it has very specific rules as to what it's expected to be. And so these are the only fields that are accepted within the point record. And then the Java compiler from that then can just say it can actually build out a canonical constructor, a hash code, an equals, and then accessors. Now you can write your own implementations for these. For the constructor though, it will always have, if it's not there, it will be added into by the compiler, the setting of this.x is equal to x for the actual class or for the actual instance field. You'd be added that, but you can have in the constructor saying int x 0, can it be an expected value, and to throw an error. So that's something you can put in the constructor if you wanted to. But certain things it will always have to be setting that field. And there'll be accessors. But kind of with that, and with these other constraints around constructor, which include other things like it's immutable, it's final, it cannot be extended, or it can't be extended from others. You can't have derived fields, and these other things, because these rules are kind of built into records, and because it actually then the class type will always be Java Lang record, frameworks can actually then benefit from that they don't have to do some sort of reflection to provide the values for fields, but they can actually use the canonical constructor for a record, which is a much faster way to construct an object. And there's also a lot of safety additionally around that. There's a lot of issues around serialization. Let's see, hopefully that again. Record serialization. I think hopefully, if it's not this, there's probably some other articles here inside Java where some of the architects from the Java platform group, they kind of go in with some of the major issues with serialization, from security to object construction. And how records actually do help a lot with addressing these things. So all this to say is there's definitely the issue where records is reducing a lot of boilerplate code and making Java less verbose, but it is also helping. There's also real runtime benefits to records as well. It's not just purely quote unquote syntactic sugar. If you actually start changing your applications to using records where possible, you can actually see some runtime benefits. And that's one of the things I'm hoping to kind of figure out or try to do here with Plex Clinic is to have one that's just without records, have another one with records, and then actually compare them from performance to see if there's actually any meaningful difference within it. So we have pet type. So it does look like one issue. It looks like a lot of things are extending this named entity. So that, and it's like I said, we can't do extending with that. And also one other thing is like records, they're not just going to be a complete replacement for every time you have like a data carrier class. So like I said, records are immutable, but a lot of times with like a data carrier class, you may be connecting it to like a database. And you want some mutability. You may want to be able to update just one field within that class because like you're going to maybe because you're just doing some sort of transactions with the database, in which case that really wouldn't be the ideal case for a record because they're immutable. So you can't just change one field. You have to recreate the record and update that field. And that's maybe not typically you want to do. So it's not like you're necessarily going to just replace every Pojo or Java Bean or whatever it might be with a record, just because that might not be ideal for actually how that class is being used. But there is a lot of cases where it could be beneficial. So extends person here. Let's see if there is list vet. So this could be an area where record could be used. Visit, yeah, again, it's doing the base entity. Yeah, those just controller classes. How long did it take to start up? Like 726. I said that's one thing I do want to quickly check. So it took 6.762 seconds to start up using Java 16 to run. What if we change it back to 1.8 and just to make sure. All right. All right, so we should be using Java 8 across our system for the runtime as well. And let's try to build this again. I just want to see what it looks like when compared. Let's see, yep, Spring Plex Clinic. Oh boy, it's downloading the internet. Luckily, I have Google Fiber. One of the rare advantages of living in Kansas City, surprisingly, is that we got Google Fiber first, so I actually have very fast internet. Just a little humble brag. Yeah, I just want to quickly see, just to see if it's really delivering on what we were just talking about, bragging about with the JDK. If just simply upgrading, you'll see noticeable improvements in runtime performance. Invalid target release 1.8. Oh, okay. 1.8.0. So all right. Hopefully it should be quicker this time though. And actually we'll do the skip test. And then about half an hour here, Ted will be taking over on the live stream, and here maybe in about 20 or so minutes when it gets kind of closer to his start time, he'll join me here on the stream as we start the transition process over. So definitely stick around for that. We can take a quick look. Let's see, the 26 hours of Java, just to kind of give you a taste of what's to come. Ted will be talking about remote mob registration. So if you want to join a mob, there you go. Actually, he's going to be kind of continuing on a little bit with what I'm talking about here, running Java 16 and Spring Boot 2.5. So we're definitely not, this was not planned. It just kind of works together pretty well. Hopefully I'm not actually stepping on Ted's toes too much. He's probably maybe here just very upset with me. He's like, what are you doing? I'm going to talk about this and that. Now you're messing up the first part of my presentation. Hopefully that's not what's happening, though. All right. And if it is, sorry, no apologies. Okay, good. All right. Oh wait, that's not showing it. That's showing it faster with Java 1.8. Okay, that's not acceptable. Let's run this again just to make sure. I did run that last one through Eclipse, so that may have been why it was slower. Hopefully, otherwise, we're going to be looking pretty silly here. So Java, 16. Java, just to make sure it's actually running 16 now. All right, running 16, and then update this to 16. All right, let's try this again. Maven clean package, hopefully should build much faster as well. All right, but yeah, the time to beat is 5.5 seconds. Should have skipped the test. Like Josh was saying, we test in production. That's what users are for. All right, let's. All right, it's running, and then Spring Boot run. Okay, see, a little bit faster, 0.3 of a second faster. But you know, that is a little bit faster, and it's probably something also if we didn't have the stream running and stuff like that, and maybe do many of these kind of runs and stuff like that. Oh, you're not seeing my terminal output. Is it not running anymore? Oh, you don't see the timing. Well, here's the time. I'm just taking Spring Boot's timing for it. So here it's 5.1 seconds for the JVM running by the time it's actually started up. Oh, Yeah, hopefully it shows at least on here in my preview. Is it showing it now, Deshaun? Okay, cool. Yeah, so anyways, yeah, it's 5.165 seconds here, and hopefully am I gonna run out of buffer? Well, it was like 5.14 or 5.4 and some change for the starting with JDK 8. So yeah, not a huge difference, and something that if we actually were to do some more strict performance testing, like I say, without running a live streaming here in the background and all that other stuff, you could probably actually see a better idea as to the performance enhancements. You can see again just purely from updating it to Java 16, and as we saw, making no other code changes. I did update it to also Spring Boot 2.5. But I'm sure also we could do 2.4.5 just to see a more apples to apples comparison as well. So all that said, yeah, unfortunately, exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mohawk. That profiling definitely isn't easy, and very much my background is just as like your normal Java developers. Something that profiling and performance stuff is actually something I've kind of only really taken on since becoming a developer advocate, and it's definitely not an easy thing. Yeah, logging can affect it as well. There's definitely a lot of things that make it very difficult to get very accurate performance comparisons. But yes, let's see. Let's see if there is any easy area. But like I said, it might be a bit difficult just because all these are JPA connecting to databases. So it might not always be the ideal thing for doing records with. And all model put. Yeah, so I think just putting a lot of these into models, and then that's adding it to the page where they could be edited. It's been a little bit since the last time I worked with the Spring Boot Tech Controller. Whoops. Now, I did see one person that also, well, really, I should say I'm more taking after his idea to do this. Here, let me see if I can find that tweet, and I can then maybe kind of see some of the changes that he has made that incorporated some record changes. One moment. Yeah, so he added our upgraded JDBC to Java 16 and record. So let's take a look at some of the changes that he has made. 18, changing some stuff to var. So owner details. Looks like there was several other changes that was made, just because I do know it's like pet type isn't extending named entity. That change isn't showing up here. So I wonder if there's some other. Well, he was branching off master, and that's why I just cloned it from as well. But then, yeah, I guess with that named entity. Yeah, so base entity. We'll just simply need, let's see what happens. Let's just give it a shot. Let's just do it live. Oh. Yeah, it knows it's 16. Oh, yeah, I guess I can't extend. All right. And then named entity had name. And I think ID was the other one. That's an ID. Cool. Now I said, so based upon this, like the Java compiler will create a constructor that will take an integer ID and a string name, and then it'll give me an accessor that's ID and name, and then hash code. And so it will build all that out. So that's all I really have to do with here. So, obviously a lot less code. And then also, it's not just necessarily like, oh, hey, reduction of boilerplate, that's good. Like, that makes everyone a little bit happy. But also, it reduces the possibility of errors, because even though like IDEs, like everyone anymore, would just automatically generate equals and hash code using their IDE, IntelliJ, Eclipse, NetBeans, whatever it might be. But I mean, there's definitely been those times where you ended up adding a new field to a class and you forget to, update the equals and hash code, or you make some other change to like a field. And then all of a sudden, that stuff doesn't work. Usually it'd probably be more of an issue if you add a field than, maybe change the name of it, because that will, pretty obviously cause an error. But that's also one area where even if records was just purely syntactic sugar, that can actually be a benefit, because it can help, reduce the possibility of errors occurring for you, or reduce the possibility of bugs being introduced into your system. So let's just see what happens if I try to build this. I'm guessing it probably won't work, but you never know. Oh yeah, probably, if anything, I need annotations for this. Well, he didn't put the annotations. Okay, let's just see what happens. Maybe JPA will figure it out itself. Or Hibernate, I guess, under the covers. Oh, formatting violations found. What? That's not an error. Okay, that Java format. Don't know offhand how to turn it off, so. Errors for formatting errors. Come on. Come on. All right. Let's try building that again. Oh, wait. Compilation. All right, it's looking for the Git name. Okay. Oh, okay. So yeah, that's and that's one of the areas where so like we're all familiar with like getters and setters, and that kind of just came from like the Java Bean specification, but like that's not really part of the JDK, and then it's just got like copy and paste it all over Java code, even though it's not really a Java standard. So, okay. Whoa, more errors! Yay! Exactly. Why is it complaining? Why doesn't it be abstract? Exactly. Yeah, they are. Yeah, I remember like also like really early on in my career, I'm like, oh, why are we always doing getters and setters everywhere? And like I wrote like a blog post that's been long, thankfully, since removing the internet, but about like why we shouldn't use getters and setters. And like I probably definitely had the right idea, but it probably just didn't really explain it that well, just because like I didn't know what I was really, still don't know what I'm talking about, but definitely then didn't know what I was talking about. But yeah, maybe those rare times where I did have like the right idea on something. Okay, so why just import it? What's the deal here? Well, I mean, it's in the same class, so our same package, so it shouldn't need to be imported anyways. Same for that. What? This is a weird error. Okay, well, let's see. Maybe that's just Eclipse being weird. Let's see what happens here. Okay, no, that wasn't Eclipse just being weird. Cannot inherit from final. Okay. Oh. Type formatter, pet type. Huh. The dangers of doing live coding. Let's see, what changes did they make as well here? Just copy off of other people's code. The old Stack Overflow model of copy and paste, just whatever the top rated answer is. Get name. That's what I want. Yeah, that looks the same. Wonder why it's a. Yeah, definitely. That's definitely what I learned, especially when it's like just pure exploratory coding. It was kind of funny. Like I remember I would run this one demo where I would just build and deploy like a Spring Boot application in Kubernetes, and I ran it so many times. So like I knew all the steps and like I knew all the common errors. And anyways, I did this live demo at my fiance's company to demonstrate, because they were thinking of doing stuff in the cloud. Doesn't matter, but like I was going through it and like I hit this error, and I was like immediately able to figure it out. And then like I later heard from a fiance, she's like, "Oh my god, Billy's a coding ninja." I'm just kind of like, yeah, I just like ran into that error 1,000 times, so like I know the exact steps to resolve it. But it's one of those things like when you actually have live coding down and really practice it for some specific example, all of a sudden people are like, "Man, this person really knows what they're doing." When it's not that case at all. As you can clearly see here, stuck on some, probably will be some trivial issue. Yeah, I don't know why is it saying it's not finding that type when it's quite clearly there. Method set name. Oh, okay. So those are all from the tests, but we don't care about tests. All right, let's see. Let's just copy all this out. And even skipping tests, and they're still giving me grief. I feel bad because that's actually one of my big things is automated testing. Yeah, exactly. Once I go offline, I'll immediately find the fix. Okay, let's see if this tries it now. Skip test. Hey, okay, it actually built. So yeah, for some reason, Eclipse is having issue. Could just be idea of the plugin for Java 16 put in, but maybe clearly it looks like it's still running into some sort of weird issues. But let's see if it can actually run now. It failed. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah, something, no identifier for the entity, for pet type. Yeah, that makes sense. Need to probably throw some syntactic sugar on that. So I wonder, can we do that here? Okay. And base entity. Yeah. Generate. Okay. ID generate value. Let's see if this resolves these errors. And actually, cool. This should hopefully also start up faster without doing all the Maven stuff that it's doing in the background when doing the Maven Spring Boot run. Hey, Ted.
Hey there.
How's it going? Hey, it actually started up. Started up much more slowly. But hey, it's running. Let's see if we doesn't immediately blow up though when we go to it. Cool. So some sort of I don't know if that's always there, but hey, it's working. That's awesome.
Nice.
All right. So Ted, actually, this is the first time we've met, but nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Do you want to send me the link in the through Discord to your stream so people can start hopping over?
Yep.
All right.
Actually, pretty easy. It's just jitterted.live.
Okay.
That forwards to the Twitch.
Nice. There we go. Yeah, so I guess it worked out pretty well. I guess hopefully set the stage for you a little bit on to be lowered to the corresponding field and getter. Yeah, I'm not sure though. So like there wouldn't be, or are you talking about the accessor there, Mohawk? Because like that's one of the things with records is they wouldn't have a getter and setter. They would have an accessor. So there would be a name field, but there wouldn't be like a setter for it. It would be on the constructor. So maybe I would have to actually define the constructor and put that stuff on there, or maybe on the actual field. Yeah, I know. This is like my very first time kind of touching with records and JPA. So I obviously need to work with it a little bit more. So anyways, yeah, hopefully this is a good lead in for you then.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm gonna be using some of the Java 16, Spring 2.5. Going to play with Spring Data JDBC. I haven't played with that. That's supposedly a simpler model than the full-on JPA. So that's something I'm going to be toying with.
Awesome. Is your stream started yet? I went to your jitter.
I'm just starting it now.
Okay, cool. I was going to actually post it up here so people can see it on there.
There it goes. Yeah, the problem is StreamYard messes with my camera, so
Gotcha.
So I had to play with something in OBS. It'll show up as started soon.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there we go. Currently just an ad playing, but nice. So did you have like
that's right, advertisements? I forgot about
yeah. Yeah, I don't have like the premium for Twitch or anything
Yeah.
like that yet. Yeah, it's one of those things like anymore, like I'm signing up for like YouTube Premium or Pandora, and like
Right.
whenever like it's maybe like the old credit card like lapses or on it on something, like you start getting like all the ads, and I'm like, oh my god, this is like the worst experience ever. Like I'll pay.
I'm so not used to this.
Yeah, so like I think maybe who knows, like they probably like intentionally like massively increase like the ad rate or something just to like get you switched over to
Yeah.
paying again. So, all right.
All right, well, I'm going to drop off here and get up
Okay.
live on my stream, and I'll see you around.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I was just about to ask. All right. Well, thanks to everyone for joining. Thanks for questions, and thanks again for Pratik and Josh for doing that. And off to you, Ted. All right. Everyone have a good one.